My name is Lauren, and I'm 36 years old, working from home. My husband, Daniel, and I got married 3 years ago when we were both 33. We wanted children right away, so we saw a doctor for fertility advice. Thankfully, everything was fine, but despite our patience, we couldn't conceive. Just as we were about to give up, Daniel insisted we needed a child, especially a son, as his mom and sister said the family needed an heir. I sighed, confused. Daniel is a good husband but is a bit of a mama's boy and always goes along with whatever his mother says. I don't have the best relationship with my mother-in-law. Daniel is her oldest son and has a younger sister who left home early because their mom always favored Daniel, since his job often requires moving. He was working near his parents' home when we married. He warned me he might get transferred, but I thought I could live anywhere as long as we were together. However, when we rented a house near his parents, my mother-in-law frequently came over, even on his days off or while I was working from home. She'd often criticize how I cleaned or did laundry, which was incredibly frustrating. She also kept asking when we'd have a child, saying it needed to be a boy and not a girl. I tried to explain how stressful her visits were, but Daniel would just say, "She's trying to get along with you," which wasn't helpful. I was initially drawn to Daniel's optimism, feeling we balanced each other out, but this was a big issue between us. Thankfully, Daniel got transferred 6 months ago, so we could finally move away. Our new home is close to my parents, only about an hour away, and it's in a well-developed area, unlike the farm fields surrounding his parents' place. Once we moved, my stress eased, and I could focus on work. Our life became much more comfortable. Then, just recently, I found out I was pregnant. Daniel and I were thrilled, even though I had some concerns about my age. When we shared the news with his parents, his mom's first comment was, "It's a boy, right?" Even though Daniel explained we didn't know the gender yet, she insisted it had to be a boy, but we found out it was a girl. When she heard, my mother-in-law called me while Daniel was out and cruelly said, "You're useless. Why did you marry into this family?" I was devastated and broke down in tears. When Daniel came home, he got upset when I told him, asking if I was saying his mother was wrong, which only made me cry more. Despite his reaction, he still took care of me and helped with household chores, which showed he was a good husband as long as his mother wasn't involved. After giving birth safely, I stayed in my hometown for a month. When Daniel picked me up to go back home, we were surprised to find my mother-in-law already there. I didn't expect her to be excited to see her granddaughter, so I felt uneasy. Daniel, though, didn't notice and cheerfully told me his mom was there to help. While he was in the other room with our baby, my mother-in-law pulled a box of cake from the refrigerator. "This is to celebrate your childbirth," my mother-in-law said, handing me a cake box with a smug smile. "I'm sure you didn't get to enjoy any good food out there in the countryside during your recovery." Her words were irritating, but I tried to let it go. Then, she added, "This cake cost $500. I was shocked. I'd never heard of a cake that expensive. Curious, I put the box on the table and opened it, but the smug expression on her face felt strange. When I opened the box, I was disappointed. The cake didn't look like anything worth $500. The whipped cream was dried out, and while there were fruits on top, they were just canned oranges. I wondered which bakery would sell such a cheap-looking cake for so much money. I usually love sweets and enjoy cakes of any kind, but this was the first time I'd felt disappointed just opening a cake box. Then, my mother-in-law smiled and asked, "So, how's the $500 cake?" I felt my patience snap. I threw the whole box and the cake straight into the trash. "Please leave," I shouted. My husband rushed in, hearing the commotion. Before I could explain, my mother-in-law started crying, saying, "Lauren is being so mean," and pointed to the trash can. My husband looked inside, furious. "What the hell did you do? My mom went through all the trouble to make that cake." I didn't get the chance to tell him about the so-called $500 cake. My mother-in-law quickly added, "Yes, that's right. I made it, so it's worth $500. Everything suddenly made sense. She had made the cake herself, and there was no way it would cost $500, not even $5. As I was taking this in, my husband yelled, "Lauren, apologize to Mom." I realized he would always take her side, no matter what. Standing there in shock, I heard our daughter crying in the other room, so I went to comfort her. When she finally calmed down, I came back to the living room and found a note. They had gone out to eat and said I should reflect on my actions. I was stunned and unsure if I could go on living here with my husband. Part of me wanted to run back to my parents, but I felt guilty for needing their support again. As I considered my options, I looked at the trash can where I'd thrown the cake and decided, on a whim, to take a photo of it. Then, I called my parents and told them everything. My dad immediately offered to come pick me up. I felt bad for my newborn daughter, having to move again, but I knew it would be better for both of us than staying here. My husband, who'd gone out with his mother, didn't come back quickly. My dad arrived first, and while he was loading my things into his car, my husband and mother-in-law finally returned. They were both surprised to see my father there, and got angry when they saw him carrying my belongings. "Running back to your parents again, huh?" My husband sneered. "You run to them every time there's a problem." His tone was harsher than usual, and he smelled of alcohol. His face flushed. Seeing him like this, I lost my temper. "You went drinking, leaving me and your newborn daughter alone at home?" I replied angrily. "Right now, I don't want to be anywhere near you two. So yes, I'm relying on my parents." My mother-in-law, also smelling of alcohol, chimed in with a mocking tone. "Good riddance. We don't need a daughter-in-law like you." Her comment got under my skin. "Fine, I'll take my daughter and go," I shot back. "Enjoy your time with Daniel." My husband looked confused, but I ignored him and got into my father's car. My dad kept calm and didn't say much, though I could tell he was holding back his own emotions. The next day, my husband called, sounding confused. "Where are you? I was shocked when I woke up and you were gone." I sighed, remembering that he tends to forget things when he drinks. "Don't you remember? You left me and our hungry daughter at home to go out drinking with your mom. After how you two treated me, I couldn't stay there." He sounded surprised and flustered, but I could hear my mother-in-law in the background, which reignited my anger. "So, your mom stayed over? I won't return to a home where such a rude person is staying." "What do you mean?" he asked, his tone shifting. "She might be your mother, but she's a stranger to me. I'm exhausted from giving birth and don't have the energy to put up with her anymore. Do you even realize she was part of the reason we struggled to get pregnant? Her constant visits stressed me out. The moment we moved away, I got pregnant, but when I came home with our daughter, your mom was there again. I just can't take it." I knew my words were harsh, but I couldn't hold back after everything I'd been through. Then, my husband shouted over the phone, "You're the worst. Come back right now and apologize to my mom." I was shocked and didn't know if I could continue living with my husband. I thought about going back to my parents, but I felt torn. I had no other place to go. As I stood there, I glanced at the trash can where I had thrown the cake. It was still there, untouched. On a whim, I took a picture of it. When I called my parents and told them everything, my dad said he'd come pick me up right away. I felt bad for my newborn daughter, having to move again, but I knew this was better for us than staying in that toxic environment. My husband, who had gone out for a meal with his mother, didn't return as quickly as I expected. My dad arrived first, and as he was loading my belongings into his car, my husband and mother-in-law finally came home. They looked surprised to see my dad and got angry when they saw him carrying my things. "Running back to your parents again?" My husband sneered. "You just run to them every time something goes wrong." His words were unusually harsh, and he smelled of alcohol, his face red. Seeing him like that, I couldn't hold back anymore. "You went drinking, leaving me and your newborn daughter alone?" I said, furious. "Right now, I don't want to be anywhere near you two. That's why I'm relying on my parents." Then my mother-in-law, who also smelled like alcohol, added, "Good riddance. We don't need a daughter-in-law like you." Her comment cut deep, and I snapped. "Fine, I'll take my daughter and go. Enjoy your time alone with my husband, Daniel." My husband looked confused, but I ignored him, got into my dad's car, and left. My dad kept his emotions in check and didn't get involved. The next day, my husband called, sounding surprised. "Where are you? I woke up and you were gone." I sighed. "Don't you remember? You left me and our hungry daughter to go out drinking with your mom. After how you two treated me, I couldn't stay there." He seemed shocked and flustered, but I could hear my mother-in-law in the background, which made my anger flare up again. "So, your mom stayed over?" I said. "I won't return to a home where someone that rude is staying." "What do you mean?" he asked, sounding defensive. "She might be your mother, but she's a stranger to me. I just gave birth and don't have the energy to deal with her. Don't you realize she was part of the reason we couldn't get pregnant sooner? Her constant visits stressed me out. As soon as we moved away from her, I got pregnant, but when I came back with our daughter, there she was again. I can't stand this." I knew my words were harsh, but I couldn't hold back after everything that had built up. My husband then yelled over the phone, "You're the worst. Come back right now and apologize to my mom." I stopped my husband and said, "Just stay there, your father should be arriving soon." Then, I hung up. In reality, my own dad was so furious about how my husband had treated me that he contacted my in-laws directly. He explained everything that happened, and my father-in-law, who didn't know the full story, apologized repeatedly and promised he'd go talk to my husband about it. By evening, my husband and in-laws showed up at my parents' house. As soon as he walked in, my husband bowed deeply, apologizing. "I had no idea what was going on," he said. "I didn't know my mother was saying those things to Lauren." I looked at him, feeling cold. "Isn't it a little late to say you didn't know? We talked about this when we lived near your parents, but you brushed it off, saying she just wanted to be close to me. You didn't do anything to help back then," I replied. My words made him turn pale. "And you always told me that your mom insisted we have a son," I continued. "Are you planning to keep following everything she says? Since you chose her over me, maybe you don't really need me at all." "No, that's not true. I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to," he stammered, grasping for words. "Then what did you mean?" I shot back. He fell silent, looking down. "Daniel," I said, "you chose your mom over your own wife and daughter. Your mom's obsession with you has made you a mama's boy. I should have realized sooner. No wonder your sister left home early." At this, my husband defensively said, "I'm not a mama's boy. I care about you, too." "Then can you really cut ties with your mother?" I challenged. He went silent again. My mother-in-law, who had been brought there by my father-in-law, suddenly shouted, "How can you ask him to do that? Daniel and I are mother and son. We can never sever our bond." My father-in-law tried to calm her down, but she wouldn't stop. "To be honest, I never liked you," she continued, her words bitter. "I wanted a younger wife for Daniel." "Fine," I replied. "Then I'll cut ties with you right now. I've already prepared divorce papers. If we get divorced, we can be strangers." My husband looked at me, his face pale. "I don't want to be with someone who would write such nasty things on a cake plate," I said. I pulled out my phone and showed everyone the picture I'd taken of the cake, with the words, "Take your daughter and leave" written on it. Seeing this, my father-in-law, who hadn't known the full extent of the situation, turned red with anger and yelled at his wife, "You did this to your own daughter-in-law? After what you did to our daughter?" I was shocked to hear this. Apparently, she had once done something similar to her own daughter, serving a birthday cake with a cruel message on it. "You're a burden to this family." The room went silent, and everyone's eyes turned toward my mother-in-law, whose face was now a mix of shock and shame. My husband looked at his mother, visibly shaken, as if seeing her for the first time. My father-in-law was horrified, clutching his head as if grappling with the realization of just how deep her cruelty ran. I took a deep breath, feeling a wave of clarity amidst the tension. "This isn't just about me," I said, looking at my husband. "Your mother's behavior has impacted everyone around her, including your sister. And you've been defending it, enabling it, without considering the consequences." My husband, still holding on to me, whispered, "I didn't know. I just thought she was. I thought she only wanted the best for us." "No," I replied firmly. "What she wants is control, and you let her have it every time you choose her over our family." My father-in-law, his face still dark with anger, finally spoke up. "Enough is enough," he said, looking at his wife. "You've gone too far. Your behavior has alienated both of our children. I can't stand by and let you destroy their lives." He turned to me, his expression softening. "Lauren, I apologize deeply for everything you've had to go through. I should have intervened sooner." I nodded, grateful but firm. "Thank you, but it doesn't change the fact that I need to think of what's best for myself and my daughter." I looked at my husband, my heart aching but resolute. "Daniel, I've given you chances to stand up for me, to prioritize our family. I can't keep waiting for you to change." He looked up at me, his eyes desperate. "Please, don't leave. I'll set boundaries with my mother. I promise, I'll do better." "You've said that before," I replied, shaking my head. "And yet, here we are. I can't keep living like this, questioning my place in my own marriage, wondering if I'll always come second to her." My father stepped forward, placing a protective hand on my shoulder. "It's time to go, Lauren." As I turned to leave, my husband reached out one last time. "Please, just give me one more chance," he pleaded. I paused, looking at him with all the hurt and disappointment I'd been carrying. Daniel, if you truly want a life with us, you have to prove it, not with empty promises, but with real change. I need time. And I need space. Maybe, once you've shown that you can be the husband and father we deserve, we can talk. But until then, I'm taking our daughter and leaving. With that, I walked out of the house, my father and daughter by my side, finally feeling the weight of years of resentment and disappointment lift just a little. As we drove away, I didn't know what the future held, but I knew I had made the right choice for myself and my daughter.
Hey everyone, I'm Karen. I say, taking a deep breath as my fingers nervously twist the gold band on my left hand. Where do I even start? I guess at the beginning, right? I'm 32, living in a cozy suburban home with my husband John. From the outside, we probably seem like the perfect couple, hosting barbecues, snuggling up for movie nights, and taking the occasional vacation. But appearances can be deceiving. Honey, what do you think about inviting the Johnsons over this weekend? I ask, trying to keep my tone light as I chop vegetables for dinner. John looks up from his phone, his brow furrowing slightly. The Johnsons? I don't know, Karen. Doesn't Mark drink a little too much? Maybe we should just have a quiet night in. I feel a familiar pang of disappointment. Oh, okay. I just thought it might be nice to see some friends. We don't need other people to have a good time, do we? John smiles, but it doesn't quite reach his eyes. This is how it always goes. Any suggestion I make is subtly shot down, always with a seemingly reasonable excuse. It's been happening more and more lately, and I can't help but wonder when things started to change. I remember when John and I first got married, he was so supportive, always encouraging me to chase my dreams. Now it feels like he's slowly boxing me in, narrowing my world until it's just the two of us. Later that week, I meet up with my best friend Zoe for coffee. She's been my rock since college, and I can see the concern in her eyes as I vent about work. I've been thinking about applying for that marketing position at Tech Innovations, I say, stirring my lie absently. Zoe perks up. That's amazing, Karen. You'd be perfect for it. I smile weakly. Yeah, but I'm not sure if John would be on board. He thinks I'm already working too much as it is. Zoe's face falls slightly. Karen, can I ask you something? Do you ever feel like John is holding you back? Her question hits me like a ton of bricks. I want to deny it, to defend him, but I can't find the words. Instead, I change the subject, asking her about her new puppy. As I drive home, Zoe's question lingers in my mind. Is John holding me back? That night, as we settle in for our usual TV marathon, I decide to broach the subject. So I was thinking about applying for a new job. I say, watching his reaction carefully. John's jaw tightens slightly. What's wrong with your current job? Nothing's wrong. I just think this could be a great opportunity for growth. Karen, you know how demanding new jobs can be. We hardly see each other as it is. Maybe it's not the right time. And there it is again, the subtle manipulation wrapped up in concern for our relationship. A familiar mix of frustration and guilt washes over me. As I lie in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, I wonder, when did I start second-guessing every decision? When did John's opinion become the deciding factor in my life choices? I love him, I really do, but I can't shake the feeling that something needs to change. I'm just not sure I'm ready to face what that might mean. Guess who just landed an amazing job at Tech Vision? I burst through the front door, practically bouncing with excitement. John looks up from his laptop, his expression a mix of surprise and something else I can't quite place. You got the job. That's great, honey. It's more than great, John. This could be a game changer for us. The salary is fantastic, and there's so much room for growth. Well, congratulations. I hope it doesn't interfere with our plans too much. I feel my smile falter slightly but push through. It won't, I promise. This is going to be good for both of us. As the weeks pass, I throw myself into my new role. The office is buzzing with energy, and I find myself thriving. My mentor, Gabrielle, takes me under her wing, showing me the ropes. Karen, your ideas for the new campaign are brilliant, Gabrielle says during our weekly catch-up. Keep this up and you'll be climbing a ladder in no time. Her words fill me with a warmth I haven't felt in ages. It's nice to be appreciated, to have my efforts recognized. Jake from It becomes an unexpected ally. always ready with a joke or a helping hand whenever technology decides to rebel against me. Karen, you've got to stop sweet-talking the printer. It's making the other machines jealous, Jake quips one day as he fixes yet another paper jam. I can't help but laugh. For the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. What can I say? I'm irresistible to all things electronic. I joke as Jake finally fixes the printer. As I settle into my new routine though, I start to notice John becoming more and more distant. One night, after a team building event, I come home late to find him waiting up, his face like a thundercloud. Another late night, huh? I guess I should get used to eating dinner alone, he says, his tone dripping with resentment. I sigh, setting my bag down. John, we talked about this. Sometimes there will be after-work events. It's part of the job. Part of the job, right? And I suppose that guy hanging around you is just part of the job too. His voice sharpens and I feel a flash of anger. His name is Jake, and yes, he's a colleague. Nothing more. John scoffs, crossing his arms. Sure, because nothing ever happens between colleagues, right? The accusation stings. I can't believe you'd even suggest that. I thought you'd be happy for me. I'm finally doing something I love. Happy that I barely see my wife anymore, that every conversation is about your precious job. I take a deep breath, trying to stay calm. That's not fair. I'm still here, still committed to us. But I need this, John. I need to feel like I'm growing, achieving something. And what about what I need? What about our plans to start a family? The words hang in the air between us. We had talked about kids before, but it was always a someday thing, not a right now thing. We can still have that, John. But right now, I need to focus on my career. Is that really so wrong? John doesn't respond. He just turns and walks out of the room, leaving me standing there, torn between two worlds. The next day at work, I try to push the argument out of my mind, but it lingers like a bad taste. Gabrielle, my mentor, notices my distraction. Everything okay, Karen? You seem a million miles away. I force a smile. Just a bit of home stress. Nothing I can't handle. Gabrielle gives me a knowing look. Remember, your success isn't a threat to anyone who truly cares about you. It's okay to prioritize yourself sometimes. Her words hit home, and I feel a lump forming in my throat. I want to believe her, to fully embrace this new chapter in my life. But as I sit at my desk, staring at a photo of John and me from happier times, I can't help but wonder, is it possible to have it all? Or am I destined to choose between my marriage and my career? My birthday was supposed to be a fresh start, a chance to bridge the growing gap between John and me. I spent hours planning a small dinner party, hoping it would bring us closer. So you're coming, right? I really need you there, I said over the phone, my voice betraying my nerves. Wouldn't miss it for the world. Honorable want me to bring anything. I laughed, feeling a bit lighter. Just your charming self. And maybe some of that wine John likes. As I finished setting the table, John walked in, his face stormy. We need to talk, Karen. My heart sank. Can it wait? The guest will be here soon. No, it can't. I want you to quit your job. I froze, nearly dropping a plate. Quit? John, what are you talking about? You're never home. Always with your work friends. I bet that Jake guy is just waiting for his chance. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. That's ridiculous. I love my job, and there's nothing going on with Jake or anyone else. What about our home? When's the last time you cooked a proper meal, or did the laundry? The doorbell rang, interrupting our heated exchange. I plastered on a smile and welcomed our guests, trying to act like everything was fine. But as we sat down to eat, the tension was unbearable. Zoe kept shooting me concerned glances while Gabrielle tried to keep the conversation flowing. Karen's been doing amazing work, Gabrielle said with a smile. We're lucky to have her. I saw John's jaw clench. Yeah, lucky you get to see more of my wife than I do. An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. I cleared my throat, desperate to change the subject. Who's ready for cake? As I brought out the beautifully decorated cake, John suddenly stood up. No one's having cake until we settle this. Karen, it's your job or me. Choose. I stared at him, shocked. John, please, not now. Not like this. Choose, he shouted, causing everyone to flinch. Tears welled in my eyes, but I straightened my back. I choose my career, my independence. I choose me. What happened next felt like it unfolded in slow motion. John's face twisted in disbelief. Zoe gasped quietly. I stood there, heart pounding, watching as the man I once thought I'd spend my life with stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind him. The silence in his wake was deafening. John's face twisted with rage, and before anyone could react, he grabbed the cake and smashed it onto my head. Frosting dripped down my face as I stood there, humiliated and heartbroken. Our guests gasped in shock, and Zoe rushed to my side, her eyes wide with disbelief. Karen, she exclaimed, pulling me toward her as I wiped frosting from my eyes. Through the sugary mask, I saw the stunned expressions of everyone around me, and the cruel satisfaction on John's face. It was like I was seeing him clearly for the first time. I couldn't stand it any longer. I fled the house, hearing Zoe call after me, but I kept running, my heart pounding in my chest until I collapsed onto a park bench. Sobs racked my body, the weight of years of frustration and heartbreak crashing down all at once. A gentle hand touched my shoulder, and I looked up to see Zoe, breathless but full of concern. "Oh, honey," she whispered softly, pulling me into a hug. I cried in my best friend's arms, covered in cake and streaks of mascara, finally realizing that this was more than just a bad night. This was the culmination of years of subtle control, manipulation, and emotional abuse. "I can't go back," I whispered. "You don't have to," Zoe assured me. "You can stay with me as long as you need." As we sat there in the dark park, something shifted inside me. The pain was still raw, but beneath it, a spark of determination flickered to life. This wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of a new chapter. The days after my disastrous birthday were a blur of tears and tough decisions. With Zoe by my side, I packed up my life into cardboard boxes. "You're doing the right thing, Maddie," Zoe reassured me as we loaded the last box into her car. I nodded, taking one final look at the house I once called home. "I know, it's just hard." At work, I threw myself into projects, finding comfort in the support of my colleagues. One day, Gabrielle pulled me aside, her face serious. "Karen, John's been calling the office, making accusations." My heart sank. "What kind of accusations?" "Nothing we believe." "Honey, we've got your back." True to her word, the company stood by me, and as John's lies fell apart, I began to find my footing again. I thrived in my work, my confidence growing as I rebuilt the pieces of my life. News of John trickled in over time. He had lost his job, alienated his friends. Then, one evening, I received a call from a mutual acquaintance. "Karen, thought you should know, John's been arrested for a DUI." I felt a complex mix of emotions, sadness, relief, a twinge of guilt, but mostly, I felt free. Later that night, I sat on Zoe's balcony, looking out at the city lights. I thought about the woman I was a year ago, trapped in a toxic marriage, and the woman I had become, strong, independent, surrounded by genuine love and support. My journey hadn't been easy, but it had led me here, to a life full of possibilities. As I sipped my tea, I made a silent promise to myself, to never again dim my light for anyone, and to always choose my own happiness. The future stretched out before me, bright and full of promise, and for the first time in a long time, I couldn't wait to see what it held. That's the end of my story. Hey there, I'm Ava, 32 years old, thriving in my marketing career and living what I thought was my dream life. I've got an incredible house in the suburbs, and my husband, William, is a brilliant software engineer who's always had my back, or so I believed. Things started to unravel when my mother-in-law, Linda, began acting strange. Now, Linda and I have never been close, but suddenly she's all buddy-buddy with Luna, the daughter of our new neighbors. Luna's 25, and Linda treats her like the daughter she never had. "Hey William, have you noticed how much your mom's been hanging out with Luna lately?" I asked one evening over dinner. "Huh? Oh yeah, Mom said she's helping Luna with job applications or something," he replied casually. I shrugged it off. That's nice of her, I guess. But I couldn't shake this weird feeling. Every time I saw them together, they'd be whispering and giggling like schoolgirls. It was unsettling. During our weekly game night, I vented to my friends, Tom and Karen. Am I overthinking this, or is Linda acting weird? Karen raised an eyebrow. Weird how? She's suddenly best friends with Luna. It's like they've got some secret joke that I'm not in on. Tom laughed. Maybe they're planning a surprise party for you. I wish you were that innocent. Work was crazy, and I was up for a major promotion, so I was practically living at the office. Meanwhile, William started coming home later and later. Another late night? I asked, trying to sound casual. Yeah, this project's brutal. Don't wait up, he said. I wanted to believe him, but my gut told me something was off. One afternoon, I was grabbing the mail and spotted Linda and Luna huddled together on Linda's porch. They went silent as soon as they saw me. Hey Ava, Luna chirped, overly cheerful. How's work? Busy, I replied, forcing a smile. What are you two up to? Linda waved it off. Oh, just some girl talk, nothing you'd be interested in, dear. Right, because I'm not a girl or anything. That night, I couldn't sleep, replaying all the strange vibes in my head. The whispers, the late nights, the awkward silences. Was I just being paranoid or was something seriously wrong? Little did I know, my perfect life was about to implode. The people I trusted were the ones holding the matches, ready to burn it all down. Monday morning, I walked into work, ready to crush my presentation for the promotion. But something felt off. People were whispering, giving me sideways glances. After my presentation, my boss, Mr. Johnson, called me into his office. Aha, we need to talk, he said, looking uncomfortable. There have been some rumors about us. I'm sorry, but I have to pass you over for the promotion. We can't have people thinking. Well, you understand. I was stunned. What? That's ridiculous. There's nothing going on between us. He sighed. I'm sorry, Ava. My hands are tied. I left work early, my mind spinning. At a neighborhood barbecue that weekend, I overheard Mrs. Peters gossiping with another neighbor. Did you hear about Ava Thompson? Apparently, she throws wild parties. Someone even said they saw drugs there. I nearly dropped my plate. What the hell was going on? When I got home, I confronted William. People are saying insane things about me, wild parties, an affair with my boss. What's happening? William looked uncomfortable, avoiding my eyes. I don't know, Ava. Maybe there's some truth to it. You've been working late a lot. I stared at him shocked. Are you serious? You know me better than that. The next day, Linda stopped by unexpectedly. Oh, Ava, she said with fake concern. I'm worried about you. Your behavior lately. It's just not right. Maybe you should be careful. Before I could respond, Luna bounced in. Hey, William, ready for our run? She smiled and touched his arm, laughing at something he said, while he just stood there, not even trying to push her away. Even Tom and Karen started acting strange. At our next game night, Karen asked, hesitantly, Ava, is everything okay? We've been hearing things. I'm not having an affair, I'm not doing drugs, and I'm not throwing wild parties, I snapped. Tom looked skeptical. Look, if you need help. I stormed out, feeling more alone than ever. The final straw came when I decided to surprise William by coming home early. As I walked in, I heard laughter from upstairs. I rushed to our bedroom and froze. There was Luna, twirling in front of my mirror in my favorite dress. William was sitting on the bed, smiling at her. What the hell is going on here? I demanded. William jumped up, looking guilty. Ava, hi, Luna needed something to wear for a job interview. Luna had the audacity to smile. Thanks for letting me borrow this, Ava. You're such a sweetheart. I was speechless as she sauntered out. I turned to William, incredulous. First my clothes, and what's next? My identity? That night, as he showered, I did something I never thought I'd do. I checked his phone. And there they were. Text after text between him and Luna. Nothing outright incriminating, but the flirty undertones were undeniable. Hey handsome, thanks for today, you're always so helpful. Anytime, Jess. You looked amazing in that dress. My world was crumbling. My job, my reputation, my marriage, everything I had worked so hard for was slipping through my fingers. And for what? I hadn't done anything wrong. Lying in bed that night, with William snoring beside me, I made a decision. I wasn't going to be a victim anymore. Someone was orchestrating this nightmare, and I was going to find out who. And when I did, they'd regret ever messing with Ava Thompson. I'd had enough of being a pawn in someone else's twisted game. It was time to take control and uncover the truth. First step, install hidden cameras throughout the house. It felt wrong, but I was desperate. William, I'm heading out for a bit. I called out, my heart racing. Sure, babe. Everything okay? I forced a smile. Just peachy. Next stop, a private investigator's office. Dave, the PI, looked like he'd seen it all. "So, you want me to tail your mother-in-law and some young neighbor?" he asked. Eyebrow raised. "Exactly. Something's not right, and I need proof." Back at work, I swallowed my pride and knocked on Mr. Johnson's door. "Sir, can we talk? I need to explain what's really going on." He listened skeptical at first, but as I laid out the bizarre series of events, his expression softened. "Ava, I had no idea. I received anonymous tips about your misconduct. I should have talked to you first." Relief washed over me. At least someone believed me. That night, I called an old friend, Alex, who had become a hotshot lawyer. I needed legal advice. "Ava, long time no talk. What's up?" I spilled everything. Alex whistled low. "Dan, girl, you're in a mess. But don't worry, we'll figure this out." Days passed, and the evidence started pouring in. I was reviewing the camera footage when I saw it. Linda and Luna sneaking into my home office, planting what looked like drugs in my desk drawer. Those lying, manipulative. I bit back my words, fury building inside me. Then Dave called with more news. "Miss Thompson, I've got something. Your mother-in-law, she's been paying the neighbor girl. Looks like she hired her to seduce your husband." It all clicked. Linda had orchestrated the entire thing, using Luna as her pawn to destroy my life. That evening, I confronted William, laying out everything I had discovered. "Ava, I don't know what to say," he stammered, his face pale. "How about the truth for once?" I snapped. William broke down, tears streaming down his face. Luna came on to me hard. I was flattered. Nothing physical happened, I swear, but I liked the attention. "I'm so sorry, Ava. I never meant for this to happen." I stared at him, the man I thought I knew. "You're sorry? You let your mother and some girl destroy everything we built because you liked the attention." "Please, Ava," he begged, reaching for my hand. "We can fix this. I love you." I pulled away, my voice cold. "Fix this. This isn't a broken vase, William. This is our life, our marriage, and you stood by while it burned." As I walked out of the room, leaving William sobbing on the couch, I felt a strange sense of calm. The truth was out. Now, it was time for justice. I picked up my phone and dialed Alex. "Hey, it's me. I've got all the evidence. What's our next move?" Alex's voice was firm. "We build a case, Ava. And then we make them regret ever messing with you." For the first time in weeks, I smiled. They thought they could break me, but they had no idea who they were dealing with. Ava Thompson doesn't go down without a fight. And this fight, it was just beginning. The day of reckoning arrived when Mike's entire family gathered for his sister's birthday. I knew this was my moment. With Alex by my side for support, I walked in, head held high. "I have something you all need to see," I announced, setting up my laptop. The room fell silent as the footage of Linda and Luna played on the screen. Gasps echoed through the room as the footage of Linda planting drugs in my office played. "Mom, what the hell?" Mike's sister exclaimed, her face a mix of shock and disgust. Linda sputtered, her face flushed. It's not what it looks like," but I wasn't done. I turned to William's siblings, holding their gaze. "Did you know about Linda's gambling problem? She's been embezzling from Dad's pension to fund it." I presented the bank statements and casino records for all to see. The shock on their faces deepened. Finally, I addressed the neighbors. "And Luna, this isn't her first rodeo. She has a history of conning married men. I've got testimonies from her previous victims." The final bomb had dropped. The fallout was immediate and intense. William's family turned on Linda, their voices rising in anger and disbelief. In the chaos, my phone buzzed. It was Mr. Johnson. "Ava, the board reviewed everything. We want to offer you the promotion, along with a public apology. Can you come in tomorrow?" I smiled, feeling vindicated. "Absolutely, sir. Thank you." As the dust began to settle, William approached me, his eyes pleading. "Ava, please. I know I messed up, but can't we try to work this out? I love you." I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "No, William, we can't. My lawyer will be in touch with the divorce papers." His face crumpled in pain, but I had my own scars too. I turned and walked away, head held high, ready to begin a new chapter. 1 year later, I stood in the kitchen of my dream house, sipping coffee as sunlight streamed through the windows. So much had changed. My new job was challenging, fulfilling, and I had started a support group for victims of family betrayal, turning my pain into a purpose. My phone buzzed. A text from Tom and Karen, full of apologies for doubting me and asking to reconnect. I appreciated their words but kept them at arm's length. Trust, once broken, takes time to rebuild. Another text popped up, this one from Alex. Dinner tonight at that new Italian place? I smiled, considering it. Alex had been my rock through everything. Maybe it was time to see where this could lead. I turned away from the window and caught a glimpse of my reflection in the mirror. The woman staring back at me was stronger, wiser, and fiercely independent. The scars were still there, deep beneath the surface, but they no longer defined me. I'll never let toxic people dim my light again, I promised myself. With that, I grabbed my keys, ready to face the day. My past had tried to break me, but instead, it had forged me into someone unbreakable. And that woman, she was ready to take on the world. Now I have a question for you. If you were in my shoes, would you have given William a second chance, or do you believe betrayal like this is unforgivable? Where do you draw the line between forgiveness and self-respect? Is there ever a situation where you would take back someone who stood by while others tried to destroy your life? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Peter, how could you decide to move your parents in without consulting me first? I challenged, my voice a mix of astonishment and anger. Peter, my husband of 5 years, barely glanced up from his laptop, a smirk playing on his lips that only deepened my irritation. Abigail, stop overreacting. It's just for a short time. Besides, you don't really have a say in this, he responded dismissively, his words cutting deeper than I expected. This house, our home, wasn't just any place. It had been bequeathed to me by my grandparents, a picturesque two-story in a serene suburb where I had envisioned raising our son, Vincent, away from the unsettling influence of Peter's family. Do you remember that this house is in my name? I shot back, my hands clenched at my sides as his smirk faltered for the briefest moment. Just then, Vincent, our 3-year-old, toddled into the room, oblivious to the tension. I forced a smile for him, scooping him up and kissing his forehead, finding solace in his innocence. I'm not comfortable with this arrangement, Peter. Your parents have always disregarded me and invaded our personal space. Why bring them into our lives now? I said, my voice firm yet controlled. Peter shrugged, his indifference fueling my frustration. They're my family, Abigail. It's something you just wouldn't understand, he replied coldly. The word family echoed in my mind, mocking me. My own family, who had run the cozy coffee shop downtown, had always been my sanctuary, the warmth of their love a stark contrast to Peter's domineering, invasive parents. As our argument heated up, the doorbell rang, slicing through the tension. I peeked through the peephole, and my heart sank. Peter's parents stood on the doorstep, suitcases in hand, ready to encroach even further into our lives. Fine, Peter. Let them in. But this isn't over, I said sharply, handing Vincent to him before reluctantly swinging the door open. Abigail, darling, Peter's mother exclaimed as she breezed past me, barely acknowledging my presence. His father, always stern and distant since our wedding, followed her inside. As they settled into the living room, my living room, what had once been a place of refuge now felt invaded. Watching them unpack, something inside me shifted. I was tired of being the accommodating daughter-in-law, always bending to their demands. This intrusion was just the beginning, but I knew then that I wasn't going to stay silent anymore. I retreated to the kitchen, my resolve hardening. This was my home, my sanctuary, and I was determined to defend it. In the days that followed, life became a blur of overbearing changes. Peter's mother, Denise, had a way of making her presence suffocatingly known. She rearranged my kitchen, criticized my parenting, and acted as though she owned the place. One morning, as I prepared breakfast for Vincent, she peered over my shoulder and frowned. Vincent shouldn't be eating that, Abigail. It's not healthy, she said, her tone thick with disapproval. I bit back a sharp retort, the sting of her judgment simmering beneath my skin. He's fine, Denise. It's just muesli, I responded, keeping my voice even. She sighed dramatically, shaking her head. In our house, we believe in a proper diet. You really should learn. Her words were like persistent jabs, each one eroding my patience. Peter, as usual, was of no help, glued to his laptop, oblivious to the tension rising with every interaction. One evening, as I tucked Vincent into bed, Denise barged into his room without knocking. "He's still not sleeping through the night? You must be doing something wrong," she accused, her words hitting me like a slap. Doubt flickered in the back of my mind, threatening to creep in. But I knew I had to reclaim control, not just for my peace of mind, but for Vincent's sake. The battle lines were being drawn, and I was ready to stand my ground. "I'm doing everything I can," I snapped, the frustration I'd been bottling up finally spilling out. Denise's eyes narrowed, and she tilted her head, her voice dripping with condescension. "Clearly, your everything isn't enough. Maybe things would improve if you had a real job and some structure." The anger inside me boiled over. "This is my house, Denise. I'd appreciate it if you remembered that you're just a guest here." I kept my voice steady, though it took everything I had. She let out a cold, dismissive laugh, her tone chilling me to the bone. "Oh dear, Peter never told me you were this delusional. This is his house too, and as his mother, I have every right to be here." The next day, the tension reached a breaking point. I walked into Vincent's room to find Denise rummaging through his drawers, her hands buried in his things, rearranging them without a second thought. That was it. The line had been crossed, and I wasn't about to back down. "What do you think you're doing?" I demanded, my voice shaking with anger. Denise didn't even bother to turn around. "I'm just organizing. This room is a complete mess," she said, her tone dripping with condescension. That was the last straw. "I want you out of my house, now," I exclaimed, my voice a mix of fury and desperation. Denise finally turned to face me, her expression one of mocking surprise. "Your house? Oh, sweetie, you're just the wife. This is Peter's house too, and he wants us here." I stormed out of the room, my mind swirling with a storm of emotions. Peter's betrayal, Denise's intrusion, and the utter disregard for my feelings. It was all too much. I was tired of being pushed around, tired of my home being invaded by people who didn't respect me. That night, as I lay in bed, the frustration churned into something new, resolve. Ideas began to form, and a plan took shape. I wasn't just going to reclaim my space. I was going to assert my standing in this household. If things were going to change, it had to start with me. The next morning would mark the beginning of a new chapter, one where I set the terms for how we lived in my house. Peter and his parents had crossed too many lines, and I realized I could no longer be passive in my own home. Their constant intrusion was not only disrupting my peace, but also affecting my son's future. As the tension simmered, I steeled myself for the inevitable conflict. The real battle for control of my home was just beginning. A few days later, during a dinner already fraught with tension, Peter casually dropped a bombshell that shattered any pretense of normalcy. "My parents need to stay with us longer. Their house is undergoing renovations," he stated, as if it were a minor detail that shouldn't concern me. My anger flared instantly. "Longer? Peter, we never even discussed them staying here in the first place," I exclaimed, struggling to keep my voice level. He shrugged, avoiding eye contact as though the gravity of the situation didn't matter. "It's just for a few more weeks." "What's the problem?" "The problem?" My voice cracked with frustration. "Your mother treats me like an outsider in my own home," I snapped, unable to contain the boiling resentment any longer. From across the room, Denise chimed in, her voice thick with condescension. "Abigail, you're overreacting. We're family. You should be more understanding." She dismissed my feelings with a casual wave of her hand. That night, as I lay in bed, sleep eluded me. Denise and Peter's words echoed in my mind, each one hardening my resolve. I was done playing the accommodating wife. Tomorrow, things would change, and it would be my terms they lived by. I refused to be marginalized in my own home any longer. It was clear that taking a stand was no longer an option. It was a necessity. The next morning, fueled by a restless night of thoughts, I reached out to my brother Mason, who had always been my rock. "They're taking over my life, Mason. I can't handle it anymore," I confessed, the strain evident in my voice. Mason's response was immediate and supportive. "Abigail, you have to stand up for yourself. Don't let them push you around. It's your house, your rules," he encouraged firmly. His words instilled the courage I needed to confront the situation head-on. I began to gather evidence of Denise's domineering behavior, photos of my rearranged kitchen, notes on disrupted routines, and recordings of her disparaging comments. Armed with this evidence, I waited for the right moment to confront them. That moment arrived one afternoon when both Denise and Peter were in the living room, seemingly relaxed. I entered the room with determined strides and announced, "We need to talk, now." As they turned to face me, surprise flickered in their eyes, clearly unaccustomed to my assertiveness. I laid out my case clearly and unapologetically, presenting the evidence of Denise's intrusive behavior and expressing how disrespected I felt in my own home. The room filled with tension, but this time I didn't shrink from it. I stood my ground, ready to reclaim the respect and autonomy I deserved. This was more than just a confrontation. It was a declaration of my independence within my life and home. My voice was firm, cutting through the tension as I faced Peter, who looked startled by my tone. "What's going on, Abigail?" he asked, a hint of unease in his voice. "It's about your parents, Peter, their constant interference and lack of respect for my boundaries. It stops today," I declared, clutching my list of grievances tightly. Denise scoffed from her chair, dismissing me with a wave of her hand. "This is ridiculous. We're just trying to be helpful." "Helpful," I shot back, the frustration boiling over. "Helpful by constantly undermining me, by making me feel invisible in my own home." I shot back, my frustration reaching its peak. Peter shifted uncomfortably. "Abigail, they're my parents. We can't just ask them to leave." "No, Peter," I countered sharply, my resolve unwavering. "They're guests in my home, and they've overstayed their welcome. Either they go, or I will, taking Vincent with me." The room fell silent, my ultimatum hanging heavily in the air. I could see the wheels turning in Peter's head, but it was Denise who broke the silence. "You wouldn't dare," she hissed, her facade beginning to crack. "Try me. I won't regret standing up for myself," I retorted, filled with newfound determination. That night, Peter's parents packed their bags. As they left, Denise shot me a venomous look. "You'll regret this, Abigail," she warned. But as the door closed behind them, a profound sense of relief washed over me. It was the first step toward regaining control of my life, and I was ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. The days following Denise and her husband's departure were oddly quiet. Peter's demeanor turned cold and distant, and our interactions became minimal and strained. Yet I found solace in the peace of my own home and the joyful laughter of our son Vincent. One evening, as Vincent played with his toys, Peter broke the silence with an unexpected announcement. "I have to go on a business trip." The news shocked me, but it also brought a moment of clarity. It was time for me to fully embrace the peace and independence I had fought so hard to achieve. "I'll be gone for a few weeks," Peter announced, his tone indifferent, as if our faltering relationship was merely a minor inconvenience compared to his work obligations. "Fine," I replied, steeling myself for the changes ahead. I replied sharply, a surge of relief washing over me at the prospect of his absence. As soon as he left, the atmosphere in our home shifted, becoming lighter, almost liberating. I began to undo the changes Denise had imposed, each correction feeling like a small victory in reclaiming my space. However, the real turning point came unexpectedly when I stumbled upon a series of emails on Peter's laptop, left carelessly open. The emails laid bare an affair, a betrayal that cut deeper than any of Denise's pointed remarks. A storm of anger, hurt, and betrayal engulfed me as the reality of his deception sank in. It was clear that Peter needed to face the consequences of his actions. With a clear mind and firm resolve, I started to plan my next steps meticulously. The first order of business was to secure my financial and legal standing. I contacted a lawyer, laid out my situation, and initiated divorce proceedings. Then I turned my attention to the house, a legacy from my grandparents and a symbol of my independence. "I want to sell the house quickly and quietly," I told the real estate agent, my voice steady. Her surprise was evident, but she sensed the urgency and gravity of my decision. "Are you sure about this, Abigail? Selling the house is a big step," she cautioned. "I've never been more certain," I assured her, my voice laced with a mix of betrayal and newfound determination. The house went on the market, and to my relief, offers came in swiftly. The thought of Peter returning to find he had lost control over this aspect of my life brought a bittersweet satisfaction. Throughout this tumultuous period, I leaned heavily on my family for support. Though shocked by Peter's actions, my parents stood firmly by my side, providing the emotional backbone I desperately needed. I needed their support as I navigated this challenging chapter. Their presence was a constant reminder of what true family support should look like. "We're here for you, no matter what," my father reassured me, his eyes tender as he watched Vincent play, blissfully unaware of the storm swirling around us. I quietly vowed to protect his happiness at all costs. Peter's return was inevitable, But I had changed profoundly in his absence. Armed with the truth and a concrete plan, I was ready to confront him and reclaim my autonomy. When the day finally came, the air was thick with tension, a tension I had mentally rehearsed many times, imagining every possible reaction. Yet my heart still raced as I heard his key turn in the lock. "Abigail, I'm back," Peter announced, his voice echoing through the now strange space of our home. I emerged from the kitchen, my posture resolute. "Welcome home, Peter. We need to talk," I said firmly. He looked around, his brow furrowing as he noticed the changes. "What's going on? The house looks different." I stood my ground, my voice unwavering. "I sold the house, Peter. It's no longer ours." Shock spread across his face. "You did what? You can't just sell our house without discussing it with me." "It was my house to begin with, Peter, and after what I've discovered, you don't have a say in this anymore," I declared, my voice tinged with controlled anger. He scoffed, trying to assert his control. "What are you talking about? What affair?" "I know everything, Peter," I stated firmly, watching his confident demeanor begin to crack. His feeble attempt to deny the allegations was short-lived. "Abigail, it's not what you think," he tried to explain. "I think it's exactly as it appears. You've betrayed me, betrayed our family," I countered, the pain evident in my voice. Peter's face shifted from shock to anger. "You're overreacting. We can fix this." "There's no we anymore, Peter. I filed for divorce." "I filed for divorce," I declared, extending the papers to him. The ensuing conversation devolved into a chaotic blur of accusations and denials, but I remained steadfast. The man I had married was gone, replaced by someone consumed by selfish desires. As he stormed out, vowing to fight the divorce, I felt a complex mix of relief and determination. No matter what challenges lay ahead, I was prepared to face them for the sake of my future and Vincent's well-being. With a sense of freedom tinged with apprehension, I stepped into my new life, fully aware that the struggle was far from over. In the weeks that followed, our situation unfolded publicly, not only exposing Peter but also dragging his once dominating parents into the fray. Their attempts to reconcile were met with my resolute silence. I had severed ties, focusing all my energy on Vincent and finalizing our divorce. The day of the court hearing arrived, and Peter looked visibly defeated, the weight of his choices pressing down on him. When the judge granted me the divorce along with custody of Vincent, I felt a profound sense of justice being served. After the hearing, Peter's attempts at reconciliation were futile. "You made your choice, Peter. Now you have to live with it," I told him firmly, turning away for the last time. The fallout from our divorce and Peter's affair was swift and severe, tarnishing his reputation and straining his relationships. His once imposing parents now faced social ostracism, a stark reversal of their previous status. As Vincent and I walked out of the courthouse, hand in hand, it felt not just like an ending but a new beginning, a chance to rebuild our lives on a foundation of honesty and freedom from deceit. The future was uncertain, yet it was wholly ours to shape. Life after the divorce was like stepping out of a long, dark tunnel into the sunlight. I had regained control, not just over the now-sold house, but over my life. Vincent, blissfully unaware of the adult complexities, thrived in the stability and love I provided. My days were busy but fulfilling as I dedicated myself to rebuilding our lives and managing the coffee shop, which had become my sanctuary. However, the shadow of Peter and his parents occasionally cast a pall over my newfound peace. One evening, as I was closing up the shop, Peter appeared at the door, looking disheveled and desperate, a stark contrast to the composed man I once knew. "Abigail, please, I need to talk to you," he pleaded, his eyes searching mine for any remaining spark of compassion. I paused, conflicted by the mix of feelings his sudden appearance evoked. "What is it, Peter?" I inquired cautiously. "It's about the alimony and child support," he admitted, his voice filled with shame. "I'm unable to pay it. I've lost my job due to the scandal." Peter's words struck me like a chill of reality. "And my parents are struggling too," he added, his tone desperate. "That's not my problem, Peter. You made your choices, and now you have to face the consequences," I responded, my voice resolute yet cold. "But Abigail, I have nothing left. Please, for old time's sake," he pleaded, his voice cracking with despair. A twinge of pity flickered within me, but it was swiftly extinguished by the vivid memory of his betrayal. "Old time's sake? Those times are long gone, Peter. You should have thought about the consequences before you decided to cheat and lie," I retorted, turning to leave. However, his next words halted me. "I'm sorry, Abigail. Truly, I am. I was a fool, and I ruined everything. Please help me." For a brief moment, I saw the man I once loved, vulnerable and filled with regret. Yet the pain he had caused was too profound, the betrayal too fresh. "I'm sorry, Peter, but I can't help you. You need to figure this out on your own," I said, my voice firm, signaling the end of our shared past. As I walked away, a profound sense of closure enveloped me. The journey had been fraught with betrayal and heartache, but it had steered me toward newfound strength and independence. Life moved forward. Vincent grew, his laughter and curiosity infusing our home with joy. The coffee shop thrived, transforming into a hub of warmth and community. I found solace in simple pleasures: the aroma of fresh coffee, the sound of Vincent's giggles, and the steadfast support of those who loved me. Peter and his parents faded into distant memories, their legacy a stark reminder of the consequences of betrayal. My experience taught me resilience and underscored the importance of standing up for myself. That evening, as I locked up the shop and gazed at the sky, its hues marking the end of another day, I smiled, holding Vincent's hand tightly. Our future was uncertain yet bright. Step by step, we were venturing into a new chapter of our lives, fortified by our past but not bound by it. Hello, everyone. I'm Amber, and I'd like to share a story about my mother-in-law's behavior toward me and how I handled the situation. My mother-in-law, Patricia, has always been quite curious about my inheritance. Since I married her son, Raymond, she's frequently asked, "Amber, when will you receive your inheritance? I heard it's around $35 million. Just think of the luxurious life we could have with that kind of money. It's taking forever to process, isn't it?" Her persistent inquiries revealed her keen interest in my finances. Initially, I naively shared details about my inheritance, a decision I now regret. Following that, Patricia became overly friendly and her constant questioning began to wear on me. My husband, Raymond, and my father-in-law, Gary, would often reprimand her. "Patricia, you need to stop bothering Amber about her inheritance," they'd say. "It's irrelevant when or if she receives it. It's none of our business." Raymond even pointed out, "Mom, you're being incredibly rude and irritating to Amber. We're doing well financially and even supporting you and Dad. What more could you possibly want?" Yet Patricia continued to dream aloud of a more extravagant lifestyle, suggesting we could move from our current home into a mansion. Her fixation on my finances was evident. In an attempt to shift the conversation, I joked, "Who knows if I'll ever receive that inheritance? The process is complicated, and for all you know, I might have made the whole thing up." Everyone laughed at my remark. Everyone except Patricia, who shot me a stern look, clearly upset. After that incident, Patricia's attitude toward me changed drastically. She became openly hostile and insulting, revealing her greed and how deeply my words had affected her. Her behavior escalated, showcasing a surprising level of animosity once she realized I might not be as wealthy as she had imagined. A turning point came one day while Raymond and Gary were away. I found myself alone with Patricia in the kitchen, where she regarded me with disdain. With an air of urgency, she demanded that I follow her to her room, signaling the start of an unexpected and challenging confrontation. "We need to talk in private," she insisted, and her insistence only piqued my curiosity while making me uneasy. A thought flickered through my mind, connecting her urgency to a potential postnuptial agreement. Though I wasn't entirely sure why that notion lingered, I was determined not to be left in the dark. I followed her into her room, and to my surprise, Patricia locked the door behind us. Gripping the keys tightly, she demanded, "Amber, you're staying in here until you sign these papers." I was taken aback, struggling to understand her motives and the severity of her actions. With an intensity that left me uneasy, Patricia explained that she wanted me to sign a post-nuptial agreement prepared by a lawyer. This document was designed to ensure that I would have no financial claims against Raymond in the event of a divorce. I was stunned and couldn't fathom why she would assume that Raymond and I would ever part ways. Despite my protests and disbelief at her insinuations, Patricia remained unyielding, insisting that she had everything under control and implying that she would play a significant role in our future. Reluctantly, I began to read the document, curious about its stipulations and the extent of its demands. The agreement was strict, stating that in the event of a divorce, neither Raymond nor I would have any financial claims on each other, effectively denying alimony and any division of assets. This meant we could only retain what was individually in our names. The terms were shocking and ignited a wave of anger within me. I confronted Patricia, questioning the necessity and suddenness of such a document. We had never discussed any prenuptial or postnuptial agreement before, and her actions seemed to suggest deeper issues and intentions. This situation had escalated far beyond simple family dynamics, revealing a complex web of motives and potential conflicts. Patricia's true colors emerged as she confessed that she had initially welcomed me to the family under the assumption that I would inherit $35 million, which would eliminate the need for a prenuptial agreement for her son. Now, she accused me of lying and called me a gold digger, claiming I was a financial burden to Raymond. She insisted I sign the prenup to protect his assets, all while plotting our separation. It became painfully clear that Patricia's silence about a prenup all these years stemmed from her hope of benefiting from my supposed inheritance. Upon discovering that the inheritance might be a mirage, she aimed to strip me of any future claims to Raymond's assets. Her manipulative plan was evident: to fabricate a narrative or create a scenario that would push Raymond toward divorce, favoring a wealthier match to secure a luxurious life for her family. Patricia's disdain was palpable as she insisted that Raymond deserved better than to marry someone without a significant inheritance, completely disregarding the love and bond we shared. Her vision was clouded by greed, seeing me only as an obstacle to her fanciful lifestyle. Her words, a mixture of fury and revelation, struck me deeply. I had always felt an underlying tension between Raymond, Gary, and Patricia, but her blatant greed and disregard for the sanctity of our marriage were shocking. This encounter revealed her willingness to sacrifice her son's happiness for material gain, a realization that only deepened my gratitude for having no inheritance to tie me to her expectations. Determined not to let Patricia's manipulations dictate my choices, I stood firm against signing the post-nuptial agreement she waved in front of me. If Raymond believed such an agreement was necessary, I insisted it should be a mutual decision made with proper legal counsel, not a unilateral demand from his mother. I was resolute, fully aware that she might try to keep me from leaving without acquiescing, but I was prepared to confront her, armed with the truth and the integrity of my relationship with Raymond. Patricia seemed to revel in the control she wielded over me, reminding me that Raymond and Gary wouldn't return from their fishing trip for a while. She leveraged my work responsibilities against me, knowing I was desperate to return to my duties. Frustrated, I demanded the keys, eager to escape her grasp. But then, she escalated the situation, painfully grabbing my hand and hurling cruel accusations at me, calling me a gold digger among other insults. My anxiety soared as her grip tightened and her screams filled the air, drowning out my boss's persistent calls for my return to work. Feeling trapped and overwhelmed by Patricia's intimidation and the pressure of my pending responsibilities, I reluctantly signed the document she presented, watching her satisfied smirk grow wider. As soon as she released me, I dashed from the room the moment she unlocked the door, locking myself in another room to find solace and safety. Once alone, I took a deep breath, trying to calm my racing heart and process what had just happened. I reached out to my boss and explained the ordeal with Patricia. She was incredibly understanding and supportive, appalled by Patricia's behavior. She kindly offered me the day off to recover from the distressing incident. Determined to document the physical evidence of Patricia's aggression, I photographed the bruises on my arm, stark reminders of how far she would go. As I reflected on her actions, my frustration and anger mounted. I knew she needed to face consequences for her behavior. Rather than disturbing Raymond and Gary while they were away, I decided to wait until they returned to address the incident in person. When they arrived the next day, cheerful from their trip, the atmosphere quickly shifted as they sensed the tension between Patricia and me. Raymond, sensing something was off, approached me for answers, but I asked for some time before going into detail. Seizing the moment, Patricia quickly engaged Raymond in conversation, presumably to discuss the prenup, oblivious to the confrontation that had occurred in their absence. We were on the brink of a revelation, each of us holding pieces of a story that had yet to unfold. Not long after, Patricia called for Raymond. He descended the stairs, visibly upset and frustrated, holding the controversial document in hand. "What's this all about, Dad? Did you know about these papers?" he demanded, referring to the post-nuptial agreement his mother had orchestrated. Gary, taken aback, genuinely knew nothing of the scheme. "What papers are you talking about, Raymond? What post-nup?" he asked, bewildered by the sudden tension. It's a ridiculous post-nut Mom cooked up for Amber and me, Raymond explained, clearly finding the entire situation absurd and unjustifiable. Gary immediately clarified, Raymond, I'm completely out of the loop here. I have no idea what this is about. His confusion and surprise were palpable as he turned his gaze toward Patricia, seeking an explanation. Cornered, Patricia defended her actions under the guise of protection. I'm doing this for your own good, Raymond. Your wife isn't going to bring anything but trouble. She's just after your money, Patricia accused, labeling Amber a gold digger and insinuating she had fabricated a story about an inheritance to ensnare Raymond. Shocked by his mother's harsh words, Raymond struggled to comprehend her twisted logic. What does Amber's inheritance have to do with us? How can you say such things, Mom? He asked, his confusion evident. Patricia doubled down, painting a grim picture of Amber exploiting Raymond and leaving him financially drained after a divorce. She urged him to sign the post-nuptial agreement and consider seeking a more financially suitable partner, further inflaming the situation. This accusation ignited a fire in Raymond. He vehemently defended Amber, joined by Gary, marking a rare moment of unity against Patricia's manipulations. It was a turning point for me, witnessing Raymond stand up for our relationship and dispelling any fears about his loyalty. What they both didn't know was that the truth about my inheritance had come through the day before, a detail I hadn't shared amidst the chaos. As the argument subsided, Raymond's gaze met mine, filled with questions and concern. Amber, why did you agree to sign that post-nup? You should have waited for me. You know I'd never support such a thing. Why let Mom pressure you into this? His disappointment was evident, but it was mingled with a genuine desire to understand and rectify the situation together. I reassured Raymond, I never doubted you would request such a thing. You've always supported me unconditionally. I intended to discuss the post-nup with you, but I never got the chance. I explained how Patricia had trapped me in her room, her grip unyielding, until I reluctantly signed the document. My lack of choice was clear. I had been coerced into giving my signature. Raymond and Gary were visibly shocked by my account, especially since Patricia didn't even attempt to refute my claims. Instead, she appeared almost smug about her actions, which only fueled the outrage in my husband and father-in-law. Their disbelief quickly turned to anger as they noticed the marks on my arm. What have you done to Amber? How could you lay hands on my wife? This is assault, Raymond exclaimed, while Gary condemned Patricia's actions as madness. Patricia tried to justify her behavior by claiming she was protecting her son from being taken advantage of, insisting she acted out of maternal instinct. But Raymond countered her claims with disgust, emphasizing that his marriage to me had never been about financial gain. Still clinging to her delusions of a wealthier life, Patricia lamented Raymond's supposed promise to elevate their living standards. Patricia believed that marrying into wealth was the only way to achieve the life she desired. This assertion only deepened the divide, prompting Raymond and Gary to challenge her greed and her disregard for the values that truly mattered to them. The argument escalated as both men confronted her harmful actions, and gradually her obstinance began to crack under the weight of their unified stance. It became clear that she was realizing her actions had crossed a line far beyond what was defensible. Cornered and recognizing that Gary and Raymond were not on her side, Patricia resorted to tears, attempting to sway them with an emotional outburst. She cried, claiming her actions were for the betterment of the family and insisting she deserved a better life for all her sacrifices, including providing them with a home. She portrayed herself as the victim wronged by those she had sheltered. Raymond responded with a reality check, reminding her that their living arrangement was mutually beneficial. He highlighted that he and I were the ones financially supporting the household, not the other way around. Fed up with her manipulative tactics, he declared that they would move out and cease all financial support, signaling a drastic change prompted by her actions. Gary, too, had reached his limit. Years of enduring Patricia's greed had worn him thin, especially now that she had resorted to aggression and manipulation against me. Offering a lifeline, he suggested that he could leave with us, disassociating himself from Patricia's toxic behavior and affirming his support, not for her actions, but for us, his family by choice. Unfazed, Patricia mocked our ability to survive without her, predicting a grim future for us living in substandard conditions. Her taunts were meant to belittle and undermine our decision, banking on the assumption of our financial instability. It was then that I chose to reveal the truth, countering her bleak predictions with confidence. Housing and supporting us won't be an issue, I calmly stated, challenging her narrative of financial doom. Still entrenched in her delusions, Patricia laughed off my assertion, labeling me a gold digger who was incapable of providing for Raymond and Gary without her. Her scorn was palpable, yet it was based on outdated information. I corrected Patricia's assumption. Far from the broke individual she had painted me to be, I was neither financially destitute nor a gold digger. My choice to remain silent about my financial status had been intentional, not a necessity. And it was time she understood the reality she had so grossly misjudged. In that moment, I revealed, actually, I'm quite well off thanks to the $35 million I have access to. While not all of it is liquid, there's more than enough to go around. The surprise in the room was palpable, especially for Patricia, who was clearly taken aback by this sudden shift in my financial narrative. Patricia, bewildered, challenged me, "But you said there was no inheritance. You lied." I responded, a bit wearily, "Patricia, your nagging was exhausting." I made a flippant remark about not having an inheritance without expecting it to unveil your true intentions. Honestly, I'm thankful for that joke now. It showed me who you really are. This revelation left Patricia scrambling, her mind racing for ways to mend our fractured relationship. She attempted to downplay her earlier hostility, laughing it off as she claimed, "Oh, Amber, you trickster. We could have avoided so much misunderstanding if only you had told us earlier." I countered firmly, "Really, Patricia? If I had clarified it was a joke, you wouldn't have pushed for that postnuptial agreement or tried to sabotage my marriage, would you?" Her attempts to retract her actions, claiming she had gotten carried away and admitting her rudeness while tearing up the postnuptial agreement, were too little, too late. "Patricia, it's clear now that you shouldn't concern yourself with my inheritance. Our relationship can't be mended so easily. If Raymond is still on board with moving out and cutting ties, I fully support that decision." This moment marked a turning point for me, emphasizing my independence and readiness to move forward without the strain of Patricia's manipulative tactics. I prioritized my well-being and my relationship with Raymond over any financial entanglement with her. Raymond made it clear, "We're moving out, Amber. My mother's greed knows no bounds, and I refuse to let her exploit you any further. We'll leave by the end of the month, and Dad's coming with us." This decision was unanimous. Raymond and I had already begun house hunting and found the perfect place an hour away. Securing a house and planning a move within a month might seem daunting, but our financial stability made the process smooth and efficient. Gary decided to join us, ready to step into a new chapter of his life as he initiated divorce proceedings against Patricia. His decision came independently, driven by the events that had unfolded, and he filed for divorce within the same month we planned to move. Desperate and cornered, Patricia pleaded with us to reconsider, trying to elicit sympathy through tears and apologies. However, her financial predicament only compounded her woes. Without a personal income and with Gary's financial dependence on Raymond, neither was eligible for alimony. Ironically, Gary was entitled to half of Patricia's house, as it was acquired during their marriage, leading to the very outcome she had feared and tried to avoid by meddling in our finances. She would have to sell her home. The divorce process dragged on for a year, marked by mandatory separation periods and Patricia's visible distress over her dwindling finances. She was forced to expedite the sale of her house for survival. After the divorce was finalized and their assets settled, Gary opted for a modest apartment, valuing his independence and wishing not to impose on our new life. We continued to support him financially, able to do so comfortably. While tumultuous, this series of events reinforced our family bonds, underscoring the importance of integrity, support, and the true value of relationships over material gain. Tonight, I had planned to unwind at a play, but my mother-in-law had different ideas. She arrived unexpectedly, accompanied by 9 friends, assuming they could all stay at my house while I was out. Despite my prior plans, she insisted on leaving their belongings at my place and asked if I could prepare dinner and sleeping arrangements for everyone, as if my evening was theirs to commandeer. Caught off guard by her audacity, and the necklace she wore, a piece I held dear, my frustration boiled over. I couldn't take it anymore. "I'm actually about to leave for a trip," I informed her, watching her surprise unfold. That was the breaking point. After enduring her relentless demands, I finally asserted myself. Please return that necklace. It was time to establish the respect and boundaries I had long overlooked. My name is Julie, a 32-year-old who transitioned from an administrative role to teaching computer classes after getting married. My husband Eric manages his father's company and often seems preoccupied with its challenges. Our cherished moments together, like movie dates, bring him visible relief, a sight that warms my heart. Although I've always been more of a listener than a talker, Eric encourages me to voice my thoughts more confidently. My older brother has always been protective, which I once found stifling. Now, I see it as a form of support, much like what Eric provides. Eric's brother serves as vice president of their father's company, and his wife, Catherine, who is about my age, is also part of our intertwined lives. Catherine has always been someone I admire, ambitious, dependable, and kind-hearted. What truly stands out about her is her assertiveness and the way she confidently expresses her views, coupled with a remarkable ability to be understanding and adaptable. Witnessing her stand up to our mother-in-law was nothing short of impressive. Unfortunately, Catherine and her husband live quite far away, which means I don't see her as often as I'd like, a fact I often regret. On the other hand, my mother-in-law carries herself as if she owns the company. As the president's wife, she exudes confidence, but her stubbornness and arrogance are unmistakable. She frequently pressures me, insisting, "Julie, you're Eric's wife, the president. You should quit your job as a computer instructor and fully support your husband." While Eric stands by my choices, her dissatisfaction is palpable, and I'm thankful we don't live too close to her. I've always envisioned a simple, peaceful life with Eric, perhaps even with children in the future. However, everything changed when Eric's father unexpectedly passed away from a heart attack. It was a shock to us all, leaving Eric and his brother to navigate the future of the family business. During this turbulent time, Eric decided to relocate to Philadelphia to work at the company's main office, while his brother stepped up as the new president, with Eric becoming vice president. We found a cozy house in Philadelphia, slightly removed from the hustle and bustle and a bit far from the nearest train station, but it promised a peaceful, sunlit life. With all the changes at work, Eric often came home late, so I took it upon myself to ensure our home was a warm and welcoming place. I prepared healthy meals to support Eric during these challenging times, and as the weeks turned into a month, his appreciation for my efforts became increasingly evident. "I'm back. I'm starving," he would announce as he entered the house, to which I would respond with a smile, "Thanks for working so hard. I'll make dinner." One day he mentioned, "Hey, Julie, my mom wants to visit this weekend. Is that okay?" Knowing she might be feeling lonely after the loss of Eric's father, I was more than willing to welcome her. "Of course," I replied, although I was aware that we still had some tidying up to do. "She's welcome," I assured him, and he quickly said he'd let his mom know. He then suggested inviting his brother and Catherine too, to which I happily agreed. It might sound odd, but relocating here meant I could see Catherine more often, which turned out to be a delightful surprise. That weekend, we gathered to catch up and reminisce about my father-in-law. It was a bittersweet occasion. While we all felt the loss deeply, I didn't want to dwell on sadness forever. "My mother has picked up a new hobby," Eric's mother shared, her effortless elegance shining through as she spoke. Today, she wore a stylish, light purple scarf that added to her commanding presence, even if she seemed a bit thinner than before. Her authority was especially noticeable when she offered advice to Eric and his brother on business matters since the passing of my father-in-law. I noticed that Eric's mother became more exacting with me. "Julie, we're running out of drinks. Could you go buy some?" she directed at me. Just then, Catherine offered to go instead. "Oh, could you? That would be helpful," she replied to Catherine, her tone noticeably softer than how she spoke to me. I suspected she was struggling with her grief, so I chose to overlook her sharp comments for the moment. After dinner, Eric kindly drove everyone home, marking the end of the evening. However, this was just the beginning of more frequent visits from my mother-in-law, who soon began critiquing how I maintained the house, voicing complaints about Catherine, and even rummaging through her fridge uninvited. "Julie, Eric is so busy right now. You should be careful with the meals you prepare for him. What if he gets sick too?" she cautioned me one day, followed by a remark about some leftover trash. "Can't you clean up properly?" Her criticism seemed endless, a way to pass the time, but it was always directed at me, never at Catherine, who she would quickly dismiss with claims of other engagements. It wasn't that she disliked me. Perhaps it was simply easier for her to boss around someone who seldom argued back, unlike Catherine, who always stood her ground. This environment made me consider getting the job just to spend less time at home. However, even after securing a position, the situation with my mother-in-law only intensified. "Julie, we're out of teriyaki sauce, so pick some up while you're out," she commanded, even as she brought leftovers to take back with her. Her sense of entitlement often left me speechless, especially knowing she could easily afford such things herself. Then one day, a deeply cherished necklace, a keepsake from my mother, vanished from its usual spot. My immediate suspicion fell on my mother-in-law, who was frequently at her house and seemed too familiar with where I kept my belongings. After a fruitless search, I reluctantly confronted her, only to be met with fierce anger. "You probably lost it yourself. How dare you accuse me? What kind of person are you?" she shouted. I tried to explain that the necklace was a special keepsake from my mother and held immense sentimental value for me, but her response only deepened the wound. "I don't care, it's just a necklace. Why don't you ask Eric to buy you a new one?" Realizing she couldn't grasp the importance of the necklace, I decided to drop the subject. But then more things began to disappear, money from my wallet and various items around the house. Despite keeping a wary eye on her, I never caught her in the act. Exhausted and confused, I confided in Catherine, who agreed that my mother-in-law was the likely culprit, given that no one else had such access to our home. It saddened me to think that way, but without concrete evidence, I felt powerless. Seeing how troubled I was, Catherine suggested a getaway. "You need a break, Julie. Why not join me for a short vacation?" The idea of stepping away from it all was appealing. I felt drained, and the thought of a little escape was rejuvenating. So 3 weeks later, as Eric and his brother prepared for a business trip to meet with a company in another state, Catherine and I finalized our plans. "I'm heading out, Julie. Just relax and enjoy your time," Catherine encouraged as we got ready. "Take care," I replied, grateful for the chance to recharge and hopeful that a little distance might offer some perspective on the chaotic happenings at home. I packed early, eager for the respite that awaited. My travel bag was ready by the door, and I was just about to leave when the doorbell rang. Curious, I checked the video feed and saw my mother-in-law standing at the door, not alone but with a group of friends in tow. "Hi, Julie. I brought some friends. Can you let us in?" She greeted me as if it were a normal visit. Opening the door, I found her and about 9 friends, all laden with heavy bags. "We're staying over tonight. Make us feel comfortable," she announced, as if it were a done deal. "Didn't I mention? We're going to see a play nearby tonight, and since it ends late, we decided to stay here," she added casually. This was completely unexpected, especially since I was about to leave for my plans when my mother-in-law interrupted. "Oh, did I inconvenience you? Kayla told me you were okay with it," she said, trying to justify her imposition. I was taken aback by her audacity. "I'm sorry, but I wasn't informed about this, and I already have plans," I replied, trying to maintain my composure. She seemed surprised but quickly retorted, "But you'll be back soon, right? We'll just drop our bags and go out for a while. Can you make dinner and set up beds for us?" Ignoring my stated plans, she acted as if everything was already settled. "I can't. I'm going on a trip with Catherine." "Oh, just for Catherine? You can go anytime. We've come all this way just for today." "How long are you going to make us wait?" she persisted, completely disregarding my needs. Then something caught my eye, a glint of metal around her neck. It was the necklace, a cherished memento from my mother. "Wait. That necklace you're wearing," I began, my voice trailing off in shock. To my astonishment, it was indeed the same necklace. "Kayla, where did you get that necklace?" I asked, trying to keep my composure. "Why, it's just one of my collections. Is there a problem?" she replied smugly, clearly enjoying the control she felt she had. "That can't be right. That necklace is rare and a limited edition," I countered, feeling a mix of anger and betrayal. Just then, Catherine arrived, puzzled as to why I hadn't met her as planned. "I was wondering why you didn't show up at our meeting place and didn't contact me. So this is what was happening," she said upon entering. "I'm sorry I couldn't get in touch," I replied, the stress evident in my voice. Noticing my distress, Catherine quickly picked up on the tension. "What's going on?" she asked, her eyes darting between me and the necklace. I was upset and blurted out, "The necklace she's wearing is the same one that belonged to my mother, the one that recently went missing, the one I kept in that special box." I explained, barely holding back tears. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Catherine spoke up loudly enough for everyone to hear, reinforcing the significance of the necklace and its sudden, mysterious appearance around my mother-in-law's neck. In a hushed voice, desperate to keep the matter from her friends, my mother-in-law whispered, "Can you both stop this? It's embarrassing. Do you want to accuse me of theft?" Her face flushed with indignation. "Yes, I find it suspicious," Catherine replied firmly, not backing down. "Do you have any proof that I stole it?" My mother-in-law shot back. "It's embarrassing to have such unreasonable daughters-in-law. Please don't make a scene in front of my friends." She then turned back to her group with a forced smile. "Well, let's go inside, everyone." She attempted to usher her friends inside. A crucial detail flashed in my mind. "Kayla, can I have a look at the necklace, please?" I asked, needing to confirm my suspicion. Catherine circled behind her for a closer look. "Enough of this. What's your mother's name?" My mother-in-law snapped, trying to dismiss us. "It's Amanda." There it was. I spotted the engraving. "The initials AR are right here," I pointed out. Upon seeing the engraving, her friends looked horrified and began to distance themselves. "Stop this. I didn't come here for this. Let's go, everyone," my mother-in-law urged, her tone frantic. "We're not letting you leave," Catherine declared firmly, blocking her path. The friends, sensing the growing tension, muttered, "We're not involved," and quickly made their way toward the subway. "There's been some mistake," my mother-in-law stammered, attempting to follow her friends, but she was stopped by an unexpected presence. "What are you doing here? Weren't you supposed to be on a business trip?" Eric stood there, his arrival surprising everyone. It turned out that his supposed business trip was scheduled for the next day. He had given his mother a false date to see how she would act, a plan devised after Catherine informed him about the missing items from our home. Having visited his childhood home and found similar items missing, Eric had begun to suspect theft. But without concrete evidence, he knew any accusation could easily be denied. "What are you doing here?" Eric demanded. "I was just leaving," she replied, attempting to escape the situation. "Give it back. That necklace isn't yours. It's a keepsake from my parents." "Why do you have it, Ma?" I demanded. "It's not what you think. I found it in my purse. Julie must have set me up," she claimed, trying to shift the blame to me, panic evident in her voice. "Do you think such a lie would work? There's no way Julie would do something like that. First, give the necklace back to Julie. We'll talk after that," Eric insisted. Reluctantly, she removed the necklace and threw it on the ground, then tried to flee. "Hey, wait," we called out, starting to chase her but stopping shortly after. We didn't need to chase her. The truth had already caught up with her. I was bewildered as about 15 police officers stood before my mother-in-law. The scene was surreal, and I struggled to grasp what was unfolding. Then one officer explained, "We received a report from a local resident. They said someone was causing a disturbance here and was often seen entering this house when the owners were away. They asked us to come quickly." "What are you talking about? I'm the mother of the son living here," my mother-in-law retorted, clearly annoyed. "Wait, what do you mean she entered when we weren't home?" I questioned, my curiosity piqued. "I never did such a thing," I interjected, trying to clarify that her visits were always while we were present. The police then shared more. "The informant saw her sneaking into your backyard, likely using a spare key to get inside." Indeed, we had a hidden spare key under a plant pot in the backyard. This revelation sent a chill down my spine and suddenly made sense of the missing items. Eric had suspected something and planned to observe her actions today, but this turn of events was beyond his expectations. "Mom, why were you coming into our house when we weren't home?" Eric demanded an answer. "It's all lies. Are you going to believe some unknown person's story over me?" She shot back. "But you did have my precious necklace, didn't you?" I pressed her further. "Told you I found it in my purse." My mother-in-law maintained her story. One officer intervened. "Let's talk about this at the station." "But I didn't do anything," she pleaded. "Mom, stop this. I can't understand why you did this," Eric said, his tone firm. Hearing her son's words, my mother-in-law seemed momentarily defeated and collapsed to the ground. But just when it appeared she had given up, she burst into a rage. "After your father passed away, I felt so lonely. Seeing her always so cheerful. I couldn't stand it anymore. I wanted her to feel the pain I felt." She confessed her emotions, raw and turbulent, and Eric was visibly shaken by her irrational justification. Sensing the need to address the situation directly, I stepped in front of an increasingly upset Eric. "Kayla, I understand where you're coming from. Perhaps I've been too dismissive of our interactions. However, stealing and causing distress is an entirely different matter. Did you intend to upset me? Is that what you aimed for?" "Don't be ridiculous," she snapped back. "Do you find joy in pushing someone to their limits with such twisted actions? Does it fill the void of your loneliness?" I asked, trying to grasp the depth of her actions. "Shut up. What do you know about me?" she yelled, unwilling to confront the reality of what she had done. "If you're feeling low, you should just tell us. We can't read minds." I attempted to calm her with reason. "Don't mock me. Why would I confide in you, you useless daughter-in-law?" she retorted angrily. "Mom, Julie has a point," Eric chimed in, trying to mediate. As the tension escalated, the police, observing the situation deteriorate, intervened and suggested we relocate to the station. "Are you actually going to arrest me? I can't believe this," she protested vehemently. However, due to multiple eyewitness reports of her unauthorized entry and the suspicion of theft connected to her possession of my belongings, the police decided to detain her. My mother-in-law was arrested on charges of unlawful entry and theft, continuing to assert her innocence. She demanded legal representation and refused the meals provided during her visit. Her father expressed disappointment and encouraged her to sincerely contemplate her actions. His stern reprimand prompted her to tearfully apologize, showing a rare moment of submission to his authority, the only one she seemed unwilling to defy. He cautioned her that without genuine introspection, she shouldn't expect a welcoming return home. Reluctantly, she appeared to acknowledge the gravity of her situation. Perhaps the loss of her husband had left my mother-in-law adrift, with her flashy attire and jewelry serving as armor against her insecurities. I pondered whether her desperate treatment of me and my sister-in-law was merely a facade to mask her vulnerabilities. Nonetheless, her unchecked desires and poor impulse control were distinct issues, and it was evident that her flawed judgments had led to this unfortunate situation. I was stunned by how quickly things had escalated, especially after discovering that my mother-in-law had been using the spare key to enter our home surreptitiously. The thought of someone intruding into our personal space uninvited was deeply unsettling. Thankfully, our vigilant neighbors across the street, particularly the wife who worked from home, noticed her suspicious behavior and reported it. I am immensely grateful for their brave intervention, which has since allowed us to live more peacefully and ensured our safety. We updated our home security by changing all the locks and stopped placing a spare key outside. Eric decided it was best to sever ties with his mother, insisting that she refrain from contacting us in the future. He even warned that legal measures would be taken if she attempted to reach out. After her release, she returned to her childhood home in the countryside and surprisingly adopted a simpler way of life, a stark contrast to her previously extravagant lifestyle. Under the watchful eye of her father, she began to contribute to household chores from dawn. I genuinely hope this change allows her to contemplate her past actions. In the meantime, my father moved in with us, primarily to safeguard against any unexpected visits from my mother-in-law. His presence not only serves as a security measure, but also brings comfort during this exciting time. As I am expecting our first child, the prospect of becoming grandparents has brought a new level of joy and support from Eric, enhancing the warmth and resolve in our household. While material things may offer momentary pleasure, it's truly the company of loved ones that enriches our lives. As we settle into our current living situation, surrounded by family, we are dedicated to maintaining the tranquility and joy in our daily lives, cherishing the serene and supportive environment we've cultivated. Hello, my name is Donna. I'm a 38-year-old woman who has recently freed myself from an oppressive marriage. Let me tell you, separating from my husband felt like stepping into a new realm of freedom. My ex-husband, Michael, and I initially met through a blind date set up by a mutual friend. From the start, I was captivated by his striking looks and magnetic charm. Michael seemed to possess all the qualities I desired in a partner. We shared numerous interests, and our conversations flowed effortlessly. For the first 7 months, we enjoyed casual dating, taking turns organizing fun and engaging activities. Once we officially became a couple, we continued our dynamic outings, and after a year, we moved in together. During that time, I learned about Michael's financial struggles. Despite my attempts to offer guidance to help him advance in his career, he rarely took my advice seriously. Still, he managed to earn enough to meet his needs, and I was willing to support both of us financially. 3 years into our relationship, we tied the knot, and a year later, we decided to buy a house. I secured the mortgage solely in my name due to my superior credit score, a choice I now regard as particularly fortunate. However, 4 years into our marriage, I began to notice a troubling shift in Michael's behavior. He grew increasingly demanding and stopped contributing to household chores, claiming he was too busy with work. Despite my understanding and efforts to manage everything on my own, the burden became overwhelming. When I confronted Michael about this, he would momentarily promise to change, but we quickly fell back into our old patterns. This was frustrating, yet I tolerated it out of love and a desire to fully support him. Unfortunately, our relationship began to suffer, especially in terms of fun and leisure, as I simply didn't have the time or energy for either. It was under these strange circumstances that I discovered Michael's infidelity. I stumbled upon the truth quite unexpectedly when he left his phone unlocked while he took a shower. I had no intention of snooping. I just wanted to charge his phone. But a notification caught my eye, a message from a woman named Isabella, asking Michael how long it would be until he left his pathetic wife to meet her at a nearby motel. The shock and heartbreak hit me like a tidal wave. I couldn't believe Michael was capable of such betrayal. Our marriage had seemed solid. He always greeted me warmly, and we rarely argued. The pain was overwhelming, a gut-wrenching mix of sorrow and nausea as my world crumbled. Yet, at that moment, I knew I had to confront this head-on. I left Michael's phone exactly as I found it, with the message still open, ensuring he would know I had seen it when he returned. When Michael emerged from the shower and saw his phone, the realization hit him. He tried to avoid the conversation, but I was determined to address it. "I know about the affair. We need to talk," I stated firmly. "I don't think we should," he replied, clearly flustered. "Who is she? I assume you saw enough to know her name. When did it start?" "A year ago. Can we not do this right now? Why did you start seeing her? Please, let's not do this." "Don't call me babe. Tell me." "I don't know. I guess I just missed the thrill of someone new, someone who's on the same wavelength as me." "So, I'm not on the same wavelength as you?" "Well, I wouldn't say that exactly. It's just that you've become a bit dull." "Excuse me. I mean, you never want to go out. You're always tired, and our social life, even our life in the bedroom, has faded. Do you realize I'm always tired because handle all the chores and work full-time, yet you've never once offered to help? That's just your role as my wife," he snapped. "I told you to stay at home, but you refuse. Still, that doesn't excuse you from contributing around the house." This confrontation marked a turning point for me, revealing just how differently we viewed marriage and our responsibilities. His words shattered the foundation of trust and mutual respect I thought we had built. "I'm the head of the house," he declared. "I can do whatever I want. If that means having an affair for some fun, then so be it." Michael's assertion cut through the air, showcasing his distorted view of freedom within our marriage. I had hoped for a conversation that might help us mend our relationship, but it was clear he had no intention of engaging. "I don't think anything will change. You're just too dull. I'm happy to stay married, but I'll continue seeing Isabella. I need some space from you," he declared, his tone devoid of any remorse. As he retreated to another room, the weight of his words pressed down on me. He was unapologetic and dismissive, reducing me to a mere role within our home. Michael, who had once seemed progressive, had succumbed to outdated gender roles. Influenced by podcasts that preached that women were too outspoken and needed to be kept in line, it was devastating to see him transform into someone who not only embraced these ideas but also refused to acknowledge the harm they inflicted. Moments later, I heard the front door close behind him. He had left to meet Isabella. Overwhelmed by a sense of abandonment and betrayal, I broke down, unable to bear the solitude or the storm of emotions swirling inside me. I called my best friend, Judy, and she answered immediately. Sensing the distress in my voice, she rushed over with comforting hugs and tubs of ice cream. Judy didn't press for details. Instead, she simply held me as I cried. When I finally calmed down enough, I opened up about the painful truth. "Michael is cheating on me, Judy. It's true." "Are you sure?" she asked, a frown of concern etching her face. "Absolutely. His phone was unlocked, and I saw a message from a woman asking when he was leaving his pathetic wife to meet her. What the hell? Did you confront him about it? Yes, but he barely wanted to talk, I replied, the weight of the situation crashing down around me. Judy stayed with me through the night, offering the silent, steadfast support I desperately needed to face the reality of my crumbling marriage. As we sat together, the enormity of my situation settled in, but even amidst the uncertainty, I knew I wasn't alone. I finally confronted him and uncovered the painful truth. He had been cheating on me for a year. He claimed I had become too boring, always too tired, and never up for anything fun. Despite managing nearly everything at home, he dismissed my efforts, insisting that it was simply my role as his wife. Well then, I remarked to Judy, still reeling from the shock, his role as a husband should have been more honorable. But here he is, cheating on his wife. Judy shook her head in disbelief. That's just a pathetic excuse. Did he even apologize? Not for a moment, I replied. He just blamed me and chose to spend the night with her. Honestly, Judy, if I had to face him now, I don't know what I'd do. So, what are you thinking about doing next? She asked. I'm not sure. Michael said he doesn't mind staying married, but I can't continue like this. Why don't you stay with me until you figure things out? I'll help you through everything, Judy offered. That would be amazing. Thank you so much, Judy. I really appreciate your support. We spent the rest of the evening trying to unwind by watching our favorite movies. It was a much-needed distraction, but the reality of my situation lingered in the back of my mind. The next morning, Judy helped me pack a few things to take to her place. Once I settled in at her home, my curiosity got the better of me, and I decided to look up Isabella. I still had access to Michael's social media on my phone, a privilege I had never abused before because I had trusted him completely. To my dismay, I discovered that he had muted notifications for messages from Isabella, which explained why the affair had remained hidden for so long. It turned out that Isabella was a coworker of his, someone who reported directly to him. She was 38 years younger than me and 11 years younger than Michael. The realization alone was enough to turn my stomach. This discovery only solidified my decision to move forward with my life. I knew I had to divorce Michael. I couldn't bear the betrayal, nor could I live with someone who viewed me as merely an obligation. With Judy's unwavering support, I began taking steps to reclaim my life and dignity. Before filing for divorce, I needed to sort a few things out. Judy and I spent time strategizing not only the logistics of the separation but also how to ensure that Michael wouldn't get off too lightly for his betrayal. My first step was to safeguard my finances by transferring all the money I had contributed to our joint account into my personal account, one to which Michael had no access. In the days that followed, as I set the wheels in motion to file for divorce, I heard nothing from Michael. I was stunned to realize he hadn't even bothered to check in on me. His indifference underscored how little he valued our relationship. When I eventually returned home to collect more of my belongings, I found Michael lounging on the couch. His predictable yet irritating reaction greeted me. "Where have you been? Why haven't you told me where you were?" he demanded, his voice laced with a feigned concern that failed to mask his true detachment. "Why do I need to explain myself to you? You hadn't called once. Don't pretend to care now," I retorted, my patience wearing thin. "I'm sorry, but finding out about your infidelity because you think I'm too boring doesn't exactly inspire politeness," I added sarcastically. Michael seemed taken aback but quickly shifted the conversation to finances. "I noticed you withdrew a large sum from our joint account," he said, attempting to sound casual but clearly concerned. "Yes, I took back my money. Why should I let you squander what I've worked hard to earn?" Challenged him. "What do you think you're doing? You need to put that money back," he demanded, his tone shifting to a threatening edge. "Or what, Michael? You'll kick me out? Move in with Isabella and have your sister move in here." I couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity. "Put the money back in 3 hours or I'll make sure everything changes by tomorrow," he threatened. I responded with silence, walking past him to our room. I quickly packed the rest of my clothes and essentials, leaving Michael to stew in his frustration. Once back at Judy's place, I recounted the entire encounter. Furious on my behalf, Judy insisted we consult a lawyer immediately. Fortunately, she knew someone who could help. We met with her lawyer friend, who began by asking about the house. I explained that both the mortgage and the title were solely in my name, a result of my well-paying job in a specialized field. This detail was crucial. It meant I had significant leverage in the upcoming legal proceedings. With Judy's support and the lawyer's guidance, I felt better equipped to face the challenges ahead. Earning significantly more than Michael, it made sense for me to handle the mortgage and purchase our home, establishing it entirely in my name. This financial arrangement was straightforward and practical, considering our respective incomes. Everything the house needed was purchased by me. When I consulted with my lawyer about the impending divorce, he reassured me that the house would legally remain mine, lifting a weight off my shoulders. He also explained that if Michael's sister, Karen, moved in without my consent, I could easily issue an eviction notice. The next morning, despite the tension, Michael informed me that Karen had moved in because I hadn't reversed the money transfer. I kept the conversation brief, which only fueled his anger, and he ended the call abruptly. Following my lawyer's advice, I started recording all conversations with Michael to maintain a reliable record for potential court use. My strategy moving forward was clear, with two possible outcomes. I would serve Karen the eviction notice. If she complied, that would be the end of it. If not, I was prepared to take legal action, given our strained history. I had a feeling this wouldn't be straightforward. Karen had always harbored a peculiar animosity toward me, frequently trying to undermine or outshine me in petty ways. She even attempted to disrupt our wedding and consistently competed with me over trivial matters. Over the years, our relationship had deteriorated to the point where I had to limit contact with her. Michael, overly protective and indulgent toward his sister, often put me in uncomfortable situations. Karen's resentment only grew when she realized she couldn't surpass me in certain aspects of life, leading her to engage in petty theft whenever she visited our home. I frequently noticed missing items, designer clothes, shoes, and skincare products. Michael urged me to overlook these incidents, rationalizing that Karen's frugal lifestyle justified her taking some of our luxuries. I strongly disagreed and eventually banned her from visiting altogether. This decision didn't sit well with either Michael or Karen, but he was powerless to challenge it, given my legal rights over the property. The situation was complicated, but I was determined to stand my ground and take the necessary actions to protect my interests and ensure a fair resolution to our marital breakdown. Having had enough of Karen's antics and the significant thefts she had committed, I explained the extent of her actions to Michael. He understood that the damage went far beyond what could be easily rectified. However, that didn't stop Karen from trying to provoke me further. One day, she called to flaunt her temporary triumph. "Hello, Donna. Guess where I am right now?" she taunted. "Michael told me you've moved in," I replied, keeping my tone even. "That's right. I have this huge, glorious house all to myself, something you don't," she gloated. "I still own the house. I've already sent you an eviction notice and you have 4 days to move out," I informed her calmly. "An eviction notice from you? Like, I'll take that seriously. This is my brother's house and he told me I could stay here, so I will," she retorted defiantly. "It's not his house, Karen. Regardless of what Michael told you, the legal documents clearly show that the property is mine." Yeah, marital property or whatever. But he has all the power here. He decided this was the best thing to do, she insisted, misunderstanding the situation entirely. "You really can't stop talking, can you? I see why my brother chose another woman," Karen snapped, hoping to hurt me further. "Well, I have nothing more to say. Goodbye," I said, ending the call just as I heard her spiteful laughter. If she didn't vacate within the 4 days, she would soon find out just how serious I was. I was fully prepared to take Karen to court. I had all the legal backing I needed. Unsurprisingly, she informed Michael about our conversation, and within an hour, he called, furious, questioning my aita to send her an eviction notice. As before, I chose not to engage with his anger. In the next 4 days, 2 significant events unfolded. I had the divorce papers delivered to Michael, who shockingly decided to contest them, and Karen still had not moved out. Following through on my threat, I had a court summons sent to her. Legally, she was considered a squatter. When Karen received the summons, she was visibly shocked to learn that the house was in my name, not her precious brother's. She confronted me, accusing me of trickery. "You set me up," she cried. "I did no such thing," I replied firmly. "I gave you ample warning and time to leave. I even told you to move out." The reality of her situation was finally starting to dawn on her, and I was ready to uphold my rights no matter what. Since Karen refused to heed my warnings, she had to face the consequences in court. My lawyer presented a solid case, including the eviction notice and recordings of phone calls where I repeatedly asked Karen to vacate the premises, all of which she blatantly refused. In my state, squatting is considered a serious offense, resulting in Karen being charged with a Class A misdemeanor. The look of utter defeat and humiliation on her face was deeply satisfying after enduring years of her antagonism. After the court proceedings, Michael and Karen, still unable to accept their defeat, confronted me at Judy's place, where I had been staying. "How could you do that to my little sister?" Michael demanded. "Your little sister has made my life miserable for years, and I finally put a stop to it in the only way I knew how. You initially agreed with my decision, yet the moment I stood up for myself, you sided with her," I responded, my frustration evident. "I only did that because she had nowhere else to go after the eviction. I was doing her a favor," Michael argued. "So, the house suddenly became an option because we're separating. If we weren't, would you have snuck her in?" I countered. Michael stumbled over his words, but I cut him off. "Save it, Michael. I don't want to hear it anymore. I'll just see you in court." "How is the house even in your name? Your brother's name isn't on any of the documents," he exclaimed. "I've been the one paying off the mortgage and making all the repairs meticulously for the past 4 years. No matter how much your brother contests it in court, he won't get any ownership of the house. All he'll get is a much lighter wallet," I retorted. Karen interjected, clearly not grasping the legal reality. "You think I set him up?" "I did nothing of the sort. Your brother believes in being the man of the house, yet he avoids any real responsibilities, preferring that I do all the hard work while he reaps the benefits. Thank God that won't be my problem anymore," I shot back, my patience exhausted. With that, I slammed the door in their faces, ending the conversation. In the weeks that followed, Michael, realizing he wouldn't win the house, decided to contest every single possession we shared, down to the most trivial items like our dessert spoons. The battle was petty and exhausting, but I was prepared to fight for my peace and freedom, no matter how long it took. I was completely unfazed by Michael's attempts to claim our shared possessions. For every piece of furniture and item he claimed as his, I had the receipts clearly showing who had paid for them. In truth, he hadn't contributed much, so he was only going to get a minimal share. While Michael was preoccupied with this petty squabble, I took action on another front. I sent screenshots of his inappropriate communications with Judy to his company's HR department. Within 2 weeks, Michael was terminated from his job. Surprisingly, Isabella was not. I learned from some of Michael's colleagues, with whom I had remained friendly, that she had argued Michael coerced her into the relationship by threatening her professional standing. Understandably, their relationship did not survive this revelation. It took some time, but eventually the divorce was finalized, and I was officially free to celebrate my newfound independence and the successful resolution of a complex situation. Judy and I enjoyed a long celebration. It felt like a double victory. The last update I received on Michael and Karen was less than glamorous. They ended up living together in a modest apartment, both struggling to find jobs. Their parents were supporting them with a modest allowance, but they were far from pleased with their children's actions. My former in-laws even reached out to apologize for their behavior, a gesture that helped bring closure to the entire ordeal. Now free, I looked forward to what life had to offer next. This entire experience reinforced a valuable lesson: never forget my worth. It also showed me that I could handle myself in tough situations. I was a force to be reckoned with. Here's to moving forward, stronger and wiser. Cheers. As I glanced around the nearly empty room, I asked, "Are you ready to leave yet?" A sigh escaped my companion. "Just waiting for the movers," they replied, a tinge of relief in their voice. "Honestly, I won't miss seeing you around. And the way you changed the locks, as if I'd try to break in, that was a bit much." Had always been curious about why such extreme precautions were necessary, but now it seemed almost irrelevant. When I first met Kevin, he was a quiet man, always concerned about what others thought. After we got married, he became the epitome of a henpecked husband. A week after I settled into my new home, Kevin showed up, desperate. "It's me. Open up," he urged. I pretended not to recognize him, meeting his panic with feigned ignorance. "I'm Carol, a 34-year-old who works part-time 4 days a week," I said through the door. "It's been 3 years since Kevin and I tied the knot. We don't have children, but I always thought we could still find happiness together." In the early days of our marriage, we stayed up late talking about our dreams for the future. We were both new to love, cautious at first, but I thought we genuinely enjoyed each other's company. "Let's be that couple that grows old together," I suggested one night. "Yeah, I like that idea. Maybe 3 kids, a boy and a girl." "That's exactly what I was thinking," I agreed. Those light-hearted conversations were delightful to someone like me who had never really been interested in love or marriage. Meeting Kevin had been unexpected. We met at a party I attended out of obligation, not enthusiasm. He seemed to be there under similar pretenses, and we bonded over our shared disinterests, gradually becoming friends. He was serious, a bit reserved, but always kind, and I found that charming. Then, out of nowhere, he proposed. "Carol, will you marry me? I want to make you happy." "What? But we're not even dating yet, right?" I stammered. He acknowledged that with a steady gaze. His proposal didn't push me away. Instead, it made me consider the possibility of a life with him. "If you're okay with me, then yes, I accept." His joy was undeniable. In that moment, I remembered how life can throw us these unexpected, fateful curves. When Kevin proposed, I truly believed that marrying him would lead to happiness. We rushed into marriage, tying the knot just 2 months after meeting. With little experience in love, our journey was clumsy at times, but that made it feel like an adventure. However, about a month after we moved in together, I started noticing the growing gap between my expectations and the reality of our marriage. One day, Kevin approached me with a seriousness more intense than usual. "Carol, there's something I need to talk about," he said gravely. I was startled when he asked me to quit my job and become a full-time homemaker. It was unexpected. He had never shown dissatisfaction with my working before, and this marked the beginning of an odd shift in his behavior. "Why would you ask that?" I questioned, confused by his sudden change. "When you work, it makes me feel unneeded," he confessed. "Did someone put that idea in your head?" I asked, trying to understand his insecurity. "No," he replied, "but at my company, all the other men's wives stay at home. It's just how things are there." I had made it clear from the start that I intended to keep working, especially since saving money was crucial to our plans. But we agreed I would continue working after we got married, didn't we? I reminded him. "I know," he said, "but as my wife, I hoped you'd consider my feelings," Kevin said, though it was clear his concern was more about meeting social expectations than our mutual happiness. "Why not just pretend I've quit? There's no need for me to actually leave my job," I suggested, reluctant to give up my career. But Kevin's anxiety about appearances only deepened. "If things don't change, I'll be ridiculed by my colleagues and bosses. I'm supposed to be the head of this household, aren't I? Please just do as I ask," he insisted, unwilling to listen to my reasoning. "I can't make that decision right away," I replied, needing time to weigh my options. "All right," he said, though his tone carried an undercurrent of urgency. "But please decide soon." I knew I couldn't let this issue drag on for long. I feared what might follow if I didn't act decisively. Seeking advice, I turned to my boss, Madison. Madison had been an administrative assistant since high school and had faced a similar situation with a controlling ex-husband, which ultimately led to her divorce. Now she was a dedicated single mother, resilient and independent, and someone I greatly admired. "That must have been tough," I said, voicing my thoughts as I reflected on her strength. Divorce had crossed my mind too, but I wasn't ready to take that step. Kevin and I were still new to marriage, and I wanted to believe we could navigate this. "It's tricky being newlyweds," I admitted, pondering the weight of quitting my job. "I haven't fully thought it through, but leaving my position would make it hard to find a replacement. I want to find a way to keep working, if possible." Madison, who had become a mentor to me, listened intently. "I don't plan to quit immediately," I continued. "Maybe I could stick with my part-time schedule for now. Switching to full-time might attract too much attention from Kevin." "That sounds like a smart move," Madison agreed, her support steady and reassuring. "If he still objects, you could propose officially reducing your hours to part-time. That might give you the flexibility you need." "That's a sensible plan," I said, relieved to have a clear strategy. "Remember," Madison added with a warm smile, "you can always count on me for advice." "I'm here to support you," Madison reassured me, offering a lifeline in the turbulent sea of my marital issues. "Thank you. I really appreciate it," I replied, grateful for her understanding. As our conversation deepened, Madison shared how her ex-husband had also changed drastically after they married. a situation eerily similar to mine. This revelation was eye-opening. I hadn't considered that some men could transform so completely after marriage, becoming almost unrecognizable from the person they once were. Seeing my circumstances through this new lens, I began to wonder, had I been misled? Despite countless discussions, Kevin and I remained at an impasse. Isn't it a woman's role after marriage to support her husband and manage the household? He argued, clinging stubbornly to outdated norms. What era are you living in? I asked, disbelief washing over me. Nowadays, it's normal for both spouses to work. Maybe for other couples, he said, trying to persuade me, but we're different. You see that, don't you? I understand where you're coming from, but I can't agree with it, I responded, stating my ground. Please try to see things from my perspective. Kevin, however, persisted, pressuring me daily to quit my job. His efforts were relentless, but I wasn't ready to give in. I consulted Madison, and together we came up with a plan. I would officially resign, but in truth, I would continue working part-time. Thankfully, Madison understood my situation and adjusted my hours to accommodate this secret arrangement. I've resigned from my job just as you wanted, I told Kevin, keeping up the facade. Really, he asked, a wave of relief washing over his face. Thank you. Now I can finally feel more secure at work. His reaction confirmed what I had suspected all along. Kevin was more concerned about appearances than our relationship. The man I thought I had married was slipping further away, leaving behind someone obsessed with how others saw him. I had hoped that this deception would protect both my independence and our marriage, but it soon became clear that my hopes were misplaced. Despite our so-called new beginning, Kevin continued to exert control over me, venting his frustrations in subtle, oppressive ways. Then one day, without warning, he sprung another demand on me. A junior colleague is coming over today, he said nonchalantly. I need you to host, Kevin said abruptly over the phone. I had no idea, I replied, caught off guard. Sorry, it was a last-minute decision. Just keep it simple, please. Get everything ready. Before I could respond, he hung up. Determined to fulfill his request, I hurried to prepare drinks and snacks. I thought I had done enough. After all, he'd said to keep it simple. But when Kevin arrived, he looked displeased. Didn't I ask you to prepare for today? He chided, his tone sharp. You said to keep it basic, and I did exactly that. What's the issue? I asked, genuinely confused by his reaction. This reflects poorly on me, he muttered, ignoring my question. I need you to fulfill your role as a wife properly. What exactly does that mean? I asked, frustration creeping into my voice. I did my best. Is there something wrong with what I prepared? No, not really, he admitted, though his expression was unreadable, a stark contrast to the kind man I had once known. From that day on, Kevin began inviting guests over almost every weekend, reveling in the social gatherings while expecting me to manage everything behind the scenes. It felt like he was trying to impress his colleagues, using me to bolster his image as a capable husband. This is getting excessive, Kevin, I ventured cautiously one evening. No, it's fine. Everyone enjoys it, and you should support my decisions. It's your duty as my wife, he insisted, brushing off my concerns. Maintaining this lifestyle was draining and expensive. How exactly am I supposed to manage all this? I asked, trying to stay calm. Stop complaining, he snapped dismissively. Any question I raised was met with the same cold response, as if my concerns were mere nagging. Every morning, I woke early to prepare breakfast, pack Kevin's lunch, and make sure his suit was pressed and ready. When I worked part-time from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m., there was barely any time to catch my breath. Despite everything, my job became a small refuge, one of the few places where I felt like myself. Carol, you seem really tired lately. Are you okay? My coworker Deborah asked one day, noticing the exhaustion I couldn't hide. Yeah, a bit, honestly, I admitted with a weary smile. If you need anything, I'm here for you, she said gently. Thank you, Deborah. You've been such a reliable support. Unlike Kevin, Deborah saw the toll it was taking on me. She also knew about my secret part-time job and kept it hidden from Kevin, offering me the quiet understanding I desperately needed. I appreciate everything, Deborah, I whispered, grateful beyond words for her kindness. I never thought Kevin would behave this way, Deborah confessed one day, her voice heavy with concern. Neither did I. I've tried talking to him, but he won't listen. We hardly have meaningful conversations anymore, I sighed, feeling the weight of it all. If only I were stronger. Don't be too hard on yourself. You're managing work and household tasks admirably. I can see how much effort you put in, and I appreciate everything you do, she said with warmth. Her kindness was a lifeline. Living with Deborah's support had been a blessing, a stark contrast to the tension I felt at home. However, Kevin grew uncomfortable with how close Deborah and I had become. That discomfort soon led him to make a shocking and sudden decision. "Where's Deborah?" I asked, noticing her absence one afternoon. "Mom's gone," Kevin replied casually. "Gone? What do you mean?" My confusion grew. "I thought it would be best for her to be in a facility. She's getting older," he said, as if it were the most logical thing in the world. "You actually placed her in a home?" I asked, my voice cracking with disbelief. "Yeah, I just finished settling her in. Now I have the house to myself," he responded, almost as if it had been a routine chore. I was at my parents' house when this happened, and I was stunned that he had unilaterally decided to send Deborah away. She wasn't frail enough to need full-time care, and it quickly became clear that his decision was more about getting rid of her than concern for her well-being. When I visited Deborah at the facility, she looked surprised but not angry, just resigned. "I'm sorry it had to come to this," I apologized, my guilt weighing heavily. "It's not your fault," she reassured me, her voice calm. "I never expected him to go to such lengths. I'm worried about what he might do next, but I'll manage. I'll miss you, but if you ever need anything, you're always welcome here." "Thank you," I whispered, feeling the gravity of the situation settle in. Afterward, Kevin and I moved into his parents' house. Despite managing all the household responsibilities, Kevin never acknowledged my efforts or showed any gratitude. The idea of having children, once an exciting topic, now seemed completely out of reach. Kevin often dismissed me, choosing to spend more time away from home. On top of that, he began imposing unreasonable rules. No matter how late he came home, I was expected to stay awake until he arrived. If I woke up after him in the morning, it would spark his frustration. "What time will you be home today?" I asked, knowing it would determine the rhythm of my night, yet again. "Just stay up until I get back, okay?" Kevin instructed one evening as usual. But something felt off. When he returned home, I took his suit to hang it up and noticed a strange, sweet scent lingering in the fabric, a perfume I didn't recognize. I didn't wear perfume. The fragrance clung to him unmistakably, a silent confession of his infidelity. Every time he came home late, I caught faint traces of that same perfume. Then, one night, Kevin did something out of character. He suggested I go to bed before him. My suspicions deepened. Quietly, I stayed awake, sneaking into the living room where I overheard a conversation that confirmed everything. "Oh, she's clueless. When are you going to leave her?" a woman's voice asked. "I'll kick her out soon enough," Kevin replied nonchalantly, his voice clear. Their words cut through the silence, revealing that their affair had been going on for some time. While the discovery of the affair didn't shock me, it disgusted me. Kevin, still technically my husband, had become someone I no longer recognized. Despite my fleeting hopes that things might turn around, his treatment of me remained cold and unchanging. We were approaching our 3-year anniversary, and instead of things improving, Kevin dropped another bombshell. "I have a business trip the day after tomorrow. I need you to get everything ready," he announced abruptly. "That's very short notice," I replied, feeling my suspicion rise again. His trips had become a recurring excuse, and I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just another cover for spending time with his mistress. I remembered the warning from a colleague's wife at a company gathering. "Be cautious if he suddenly mentions a business trip. Our company doesn't even have those." Her words echoed in my mind, solidifying my doubts. I had already confirmed my suspicions earlier when I stumbled upon a chat on Kevin's phone. He'd taken paid leave, disguising this business trip as something legitimate. That was the moment I knew it was over. Armed with undeniable proof of his affair, I prepared to confront him with divorce papers the moment he returned. However, Kevin beat me to it. As soon as he got home, he looked at me coldly and said, "Are you ready to leave? The movers will be here soon." "What? Why are you saying this all of a sudden?" I asked, stunned by his blunt directive. "I need you to be gone before I get back," he demanded, his voice void of emotion. And just like that, the final chapter of our marriage had begun to close, but this time, I was ready to write my own ending. "What?" I exclaimed, incredulous. "You can't just spring this on me and expect me to leave immediately." "Then I'll wait a bit, but you need to start preparing to leave," he replied dismissively. Goodbye. I never imagined my once timid and overly concerned husband could transform into such a domineering partner. This was the final straw. The future I had envisioned with him felt like a distant memory, overshadowed by the reality of living with a man I could no longer trust. What came next? I wondered aloud. This could get interesting. Have the movers arrived yet? No need to rush, they should be here soon. Oh, and I almost forgot to mention, I'm changing the locks on the house, he added casually. All right, got it, I said, my heart sinking. The thought of never seeing his face again was oddly relieving. After nearly 3 years of marriage, I was convinced our relationship was irreversibly over. I quickly gathered my things and left the house, instructing my lawyer to file for divorce. Despite our circumstances, Kevin boldly posted pictures with his mistress on social media, displaying a level of audacity I couldn't comprehend. How could he be so reckless, providing even more evidence of his affair? Even our mutual friends noticed his strange behavior, marking the public unraveling of what we once shared. After leaving my in-laws' home, I transitioned back to full-time work and moved into a spacious high-rise apartment in the suburbs, a place I had long dreamed of living. It felt wonderfully liberating to be on my own, free from Kevin's presence. About a month after settling in, I was jolted awake one morning by the doorbell. Peering through the monitor, I was stunned to see Kevin standing outside. Hey, it's me, Kevin. Open up, Carol. He called out, his voice presumptuous and demanding. His sudden appearance and entitlement were beyond comprehension. Deciding to feign ignorance, I thought it would be more amusing than outright rejecting him. Who are you? I'm sorry, but I don't know you, I replied through the intercom. Don't tell me you've forgotten your husband's face. I'm not married. I think you've mistaken me for someone else, I continued, watching as desperation washed over him. His face was a shadow of the timid man I once knew. Please just listen. I've been deceived, and I need Carol's help, he pleaded. I'm sorry, but I'm not obligated to assist you. If you persist, I'll have to call the police. Seriously, I don't know you. I was resolute in treating him as a stranger. Kevin must have thought I would always be there to solve his problems. But I was no longer that person who tolerated such dependency. That's it, you made this mess, so it's up to you to fix it, I replied coldly. You don't have to be so tough on me, he whimpered. Oh, and by the way, can't stay at your parents' place anymore, he added abruptly. What do you mean? Do you know whose name the house is under? I asked, surprised by his statement. No, but it used to belong to Deborah. Now, it's in my name, he explained, revealing a significant change he was unaware of. Kevin had insisted I leave when I confided in Deborah, which visibly upset and disappointed her. I can't believe my son has turned out like this. I'm truly sorry, especially after all the help you've given us, Deborah had said during one of our conversations. Deborah, you're divorcing Kevin, aren't you? She had asked. Yes, it's for the best, I confirmed. In that case, I'll transfer the house to you, she offered, making a decision that took both me and presumably Kevin by surprise. Why would Deborah transfer their rights to their in-laws' house to me? Kevin would undoubtedly be puzzled by such a turn of events, unaware that he had been living with his mistress throughout all this turmoil. That's the situation. Understand and leave promptly, I concluded, shutting down any further attempts at reconciliation or intrusion into my life. We likely wouldn't cross paths again, but I made it clear to him that if he persisted, I would not hesitate to call the police. With that firm warning, he finally relented and left. The divorce proceeded as planned, and I received the settlement we had agreed upon. As it turned out, Kevin had been missold and financially exploited by his mistress. Moreover, the divorce settlement amounted to approximately $410,000. His mistress abandoned him as soon as the money dried up. But I was determined not to let matters end there. I hired both a lawyer and a detective to ensure that all financial claims against him were thoroughly pursued. Additionally, I sought a further divorce settlement claim to secure over $22,000 more. Furthermore, the ownership of the house was officially transferred to me. I insisted that Kevin vacate the premises, and though he initially resisted, legal proceedings left him with no choice but to comply. As for his current whereabouts, I remained blissfully unaware and frankly uninterested. Eventually, his company caught wind of the photos he had posted with his mistress on social media. Unable to endure the scrutiny and the unraveling of his past facade, Kevin chose to resign voluntarily. This outcome seemed inevitable given his true character. If I had one last thing to say about the entire ordeal, it would be this. I don't dwell on it. I am divorced now, and I view it as a learning opportunity, an opening to move forward positively. My bond with Deborah endures, and I intend to focus on my career independently, relishing life as a single individual and embracing all the freedom and opportunities it offers.